Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Would you all join me with the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you call the roll, please?
Roll call.
Division 1.
Here.
Division 2.
Here.
Division 3. Here. Division 4. Here. Division 5.
Here. Thank you. Okay, so this is our second of three, I believe, strategic planning workshops for Plan for Water. As is normal procedure for us, we will be having our General Manager, Hanson, will be moderating the meeting or facilitating the meeting. And if you'd like to, this is a workshop format, so just jump into the conversation anytime. It's not formal. Anybody, everybody, welcome to just chime in. So with that, we will turn it over to Jennifer.
Yeah, just a couple of other quick comments. Like Mr. Beerwagen said, please feel free to jump in at any time as members of the public and provide your input. And then for those of our friends that are online, you can also use the chat function, and we will slip your question in as soon as we can. So we're going to I'll just kind of tell you how the day is looking. Our goal by the end of this day is to essentially review the SWOTs, which is the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, go over public survey results, and then distill that information down into specific opportunities for the district that will then be used to be leveraged for the development of the strategic priorities. So we will first do our normal Plan for Water matrix review. There are some new faces here, so we will do introductions of just the new folks that are in the room. We have a very quick team building exercise just to get everybody a little bit warmed up and awake. Then we will review the previous set of strategic goals. I have heard some comments from the public that they are afraid we are just going to blanket adopt the former strategic goals, and that is not the intent at all. We will be redoing those essentially from scratch, but we are just going to review them. This was a request that was on the parking lot from last time. So we'll review them and just report out simply on the status. We will then talk about the public survey results. Then we have the public SWOT presentations, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to the items. The SWOTs were sent out to a variety of stakeholder groups, and those stakeholder groups were invited to come present their SWOT if they so desired to do so. We will then have a staff SWOT presentation. In former years, we had every department do their own SWOT. This year, we distilled it down to one SWOT. And then we're going to do some group work at the tables, which is intended, as I stated previously, to essentially distill down the opportunities that will then be transformed into actual strategic goals when we get to that section. And we'll do our wrap-up. So I really am hoping, trying to get out of here just a hair early at 5:30. And like I said, any staff that needs to leave for their child's open back-to-school night, please do so. And with that, anybody have questions or concerns about how the day's laid out? Anyone? Kate, are we watching the comments? Okay. All right, so we have snacks in the corner. Please help yourself. We will continue to use the parking lot. Parking lot is to document things that we want to revisit at a later time. And then, like I said, there will be some group work. So we are currently in stage 5 of the Plan for Water process, which is intended to develop the district's mission, vision, values, and strategic priorities. I do anticipate that this effort, strategic planning, will go on for at least 2 more meetings, possibly a third. It depends on how quickly we do our work. And then upon completion of the strategic planning effort, that information will be distilled down into a standalone document that will be referenced into the Plan for Water. And the reason being is that it really is intended to be much more encompassing than just the Plan for Water. The strategic plans will be utilized by the board and by staff to govern operations, annual budgeting, and also just priorities, work priorities for the district. As you're aware, we reviewed several initiatives last meeting that the district is currently working on, and it is always imperative, we have very full plates, and so we always like to ensure that we are aligned, and that is the primary purpose of a strategic plan. So after we finish that, we will have one very short meeting related to the basis for the plan for water. So that really talks about the horizon for the plan, how it's going to work, how it will be used, updated, and how it's transmitted to the public. And then we get into kind of the meat of the modeling effort. So we have currently been working on the modeling effort. As most of you do know, we have hired a consultant. We have tapped some individuals who have been assisting us through the modeling process with providing some input. The consulting modeling team just recently proposed to staff an additional scope of work related to the modeling, and essentially is a different type of modeling, a more updated modeling that they're recommending. We did speak with a smaller group regarding that effort, and had the modeling team provide a presentation to that group, and there's pretty much a good thumbs up from that group that it's something that is worthwhile for consideration by the board. We will be taking that item, we'll have the modeling team do a presentation to this group regarding the proposed increased modeling effort, because there is a fairly hefty price tag associated with it, and then it will be going to the board at a formal board meeting for actual vote. So stay tuned. And if, anybody in the public is interested in kind of being part of this smaller team we bounce things off of, just please reach out to me and I'm happy to include you. It's pretty loosely knitted, so it's more of it's an opportunity for staff to get input from, people who have interest in modeling, also have expertise that we may not have on the staff. Once we go through hydrology, demand, and supply, that will take the bulk of the winter months. We will then get into the strategy options, and that is an exercise by which we'll identify any potential solutions if there is an additional supply need that is identified through the modeling effort. So that will be basically the plan for water process. Like I said, we're in stage 5, and so I really appreciate all the public input and all of the staff participation in this effort. We've had a really lot of good feedback from staff and the public and the board. So does anybody have any questions before we move on to real quick introductions? Okay, so we're going to go to each table. If you are a staff member, all the board members were here previously, please just stand up, introduce yourself, say what department you worked in, and your favorite thing about NID. Naomi.
Do I need to stand up?
Yes.
I'm Naomi Schmidt. I'm in the HR department. My favorite thing about NID is the people I've met.
Awesome. All right, that table is no one is new. No one is new. Nate?
Nate Losley, water superintendent, and I like the challenge of moving water.
And it is a challenge. It's complicated. Chad?
I'm Shad Chiddock. I work in water treatment. My favorite part about NID is all the great people that I get to work with. And none of them are here right now.
Well done. And Debbie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Debbie Martin. I'm the controller and working in the finance department. I think one of my favorite pieces of NID is definitely the people and then the challenge that our finances bring to put it all together for everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. So we are now going to do an extremely quick icebreaker. This is just intended to get people a little bit warmed up. I know that this is nap time for some people after lunch. So Mr. Ortiz is going to lead us ever, and there's prizes.
Okay.
So, and I also think that members of the public, if you want an opportunity to win a prize, you may join a table for this exercise.
Yes.
Yeah. This could be a quick icebreaker.
Quick.
So, this is called the order game. So we're gonna line up in order, we're gonna have groups, so you're gonna have to stand up on your table, and I'm gonna,
On the table?
stand up, your table is gonna have to stand
That
up.
would be a risk, do not
would
get
be a
on the
risk.
table, please.
Yes, that's right, that would be in the SWOT analysis.
So I'm gonna identify some groups, and you guys have to line up in a group. For example, I'm gonna say everybody line up by shortest to the highest, but that's an example. So everybody stand up, and there is prizes, there is prizes. Okay, so whoever lines up first, you're gonna have to say the order, and we're gonna see who can identify the order first. And let's do one, and you'll see. All right, so line up. Are you gonna play this one?
No, that is really secret, that's like 10 pages
I
down.
couldn't remember all this, so I had to write it down. Okay, so line up by your first, the initial of your first name.
Now alphabetical order.
Alphabetical order, so if it's Adolf, it'd be A,
Just the table or?
raise your hand, go to the table.
Just your table.
Oh, different table.
All right, done.
Who's number two? Number two?
You didn't raise your hand.
Yeah, raise your hand.
You only have 3 people. I know.
I know, somebody needs to come in and deal with it.
They were the slowest to 3.
And then the closest three, and we did the closest three?
That's weird, the slowest. Okay, we in the
Okay,
order.
number one, okay, so name your order.
Karen.
Okay. Ian. Okay. And? Yeah, they won, okay, they're up one.
Okay, 1 point.
Okay, 1 point. Okay, that's so fair. Okay, so the next one is line up by the number of letters in your first name. So like for me, example, I'm 4, John. Raise your hand.
I don't know, I saw Chip first.
This is number 1 and number 2.
Chip was number 2.
I think that I said raise.
We never moved, we had a button.
Okay. All right, so this is the first one.
Karen.
5.
Oh, man.
Oh, they're gonna get a little harder. They're up 2. We can.
Don, I think you'll make that.
Take them out. All right, so now, think about the calendar month that you were born in. So the calendar month you were born in. So it's been April, February.
Here we are, right here.
We're number 1.
Number 1.
Number
I think they were number 2.
2. Number 2?
Yeah, Aurora, number 3.
Okay.
Acknowledge it.
Okay, this table over here.
Chip won.
Man, they only got 2 people.
Who's lowest?
Totally unfair.
August?
December.
December, all right. They got it.
September.
Okay. 2 to 1.
Only got 3.
I think we did.
21?
Okay, so now line up by the date, calendar date, so the month date.
Okay, done.
Chip is raising his hand.
We need somebody over here to help go with these guys.
But he's so big, he likes 3 people.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
They just qualified that.
All right, who was number 1? Number 1.
I don't know.
Very good. Okay, what do you guys have?
3.
3?
Oh, no, I'm the 1.
1.
Both you guys are 1?
Yeah.
15. They got it.
You have some weird numerology thing going on.
Yeah, we do.
They haven't switched positions.
Okay,
No, I didn't.
They
I didn't.
win 1 more.
They went 1 more, you guys are considered.
Well, that was just also kind of surprise.
Then we'll be watching.
Okay, here, so what we're gonna do is, the second place team is gonna go against these for the,
Oh, right on.
so there's another chance. Okay, so here's one. Line up by your commute time to the office. If you work from home, then.
Second. First, second. She was first.
Let's go to the phone way back. Okay. 2 minutes.
8. 30.
30? 30. Okay. Oh, man.
Okay, now we have this.
Number 2.
3 minutes.
9 minutes. 10. 40.
60.
Okay. There we go. All right. So I'm gonna, you and this table are gonna play it out for the winners. They're gonna duke it out.
Yeah, they gotta have one more person. What? Well, yeah, so it's 5 to 5, because they can, 4 people can line up. Okay. Now, Janet, she is competitive, man.
I'm competitive.
Here, John, you want me to hold that for you?
No, you know. Okay, so line up, count the number of your first and last name and the number of characters in your name, line up by that, the total amount.
13 down there.
Looks like they got it. I
Okay.
think we have.
7. I know, it's a lot.
12.
13.
All right.
They got it. Good job. These guys are the winners. And I told you, there was prizes. Here's you a coffee.
Oh, I'll give my friend.
Coffee.
All right.
That was way better than Legos.
Hey!
Thanks, everyone, for playing.
Thank you, John. All right, so next up is for Mr. Jones is going to provide a review of our previous strategic goal progress.
Okay, Chris, do you have the slides or anything?
Item in the agenda. Your PowerPoint.
Yeah, probably PowerPoint.
PowerPoint?
PDF.
Okay.
Okay. This was in the packet. I'm sorry, it's not a PowerPoint, but it's listed on a PDF. So we'll just kind of go through it. You'll be able to see all the activities up here. The idea and the goal last time, it was suggested that we review past strategic planning activities and where we are currently with sort of some metric system on the current strategic plan, which is the 2016 to 2018 strategic plan. And then as we talked about last time, we were involved in 2018 and 19, a updated version of that strategic plan until it was cut off, and we didn't get past working on it. So that process, so we took a look at both the 2016 to 2018 strategic plan, where we have 4 individual goals of the district. The 2019 process updated us with an additional, not an additional, but 6 goals. So it took some elements of those previous goals and then updated those and added a couple more at the back end. Remember that one, why we're here today, that one was never adopted by the board. It was never put together. So we tried to go through and define what strategic plan we had and develop a metric process on this. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of kind of insider baseball. There was no very well-defined metric process that we could identify in any of these strategic goals of measurable intent. And so I think that's a good thing to think about as we develop the goals and objectives of the next strategic plan, which is why we're here, where they have to be measurable. They have to be, defined so that we can actually track how we're doing on a year-over-year basis. Otherwise, they're just words on a paper, and you'll see, and you've seen in the way that we attempted to quantify the status of these. It certainly is not 30% complete. 1 out of 9, activities are completed. It is very fungible and really gray, and so the 4 different scalable actions, after kind of agonizing over what would be a relative scalable concept here, is sort of not started, and that means no measurable start of the activity at all between 2016 and today. Partially implemented, which means started the activity, yet probably some sort of a delay. That could have been for any particular reason. I'm not suggesting why there would be a delay, but it's just, it probably started, but it was delayed some way between now and when those goals were identified. Implemented, which is the activity is underway and ongoing. Again, recall, a lot of these have very little, if not no, way of measurement that was defined in the original strategic plan from 16 to 18, nor in the updated version where we got to in 2019 in terms of measurableness. And then finally, complete. This is really the only like measurable activity, and there's only, I think, a couple of them that were defined as the activity has successfully completed. So if we look, why don't you increase the size, Chris?
Oh, sorry. Joanne's running today.
Joanne?
I'm over here directing her poorly. I'm sorry, I didn't do anything.
Why don't we increase the size a little bit, just so it's easier to read? Goal 1, 2016 to 18 strategic plan. There you go. Okay. Thank you. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so it's broken up to 4 in 2016 to 18, and then the 6 in 2019. I'm not going to necessarily go through every single one because I don't think it's necessary unless some of you in the public or staff are interested in looking at and defining or trying to ask me why I presented some of these in some unmeasurable measurable. So goal number 1 of the 16-18 strategic plan was the continued health of the district is dependent upon the proactive management of our physical, financial, and human resources. So below that, there was a list of actions, and so these are all the actions that are identified in the existing strategic plan. These are the things that were intended to be the measurable aspect of defining the measurable strategic goal. Well, as you can see, overall, and it's definitely not a scientific weighted average on any of this, its overall is subjectively pretty much this goal has been implemented since 2016. We have implemented the continued health of the district is dependent upon the proactive management of our physical, financial, and human resources. And we identify that in a few things, but certainly the first one is develop succession planning. We really haven't done that in any measurable effect here at the district. Yes, we have job descriptions, and yes, we have folks that we want to mentor and bring up into different aspects, but we haven't defined a real succession plan for the district, for all elements of the district activities. I'm going to skip around a little bit. Develop a safety program. Since 2016, we do have that. I will say that we have done that. That has been implemented. I don't say it's complete, because here's the thing, and Cindy will know, that your safety plan is never complete, much like many of these activities, so there's really very little measurement when you can say that something's complete. It's been implemented. Improved financial systems, we're working on that. We're implementing it. It started, it was delayed, now we're implementing it again. So that's kind of how we thought about trying to define what these are. Employ consistent environmental compliance. That's implemented. But in reality, that's kind of an interesting goal because that's what we have to do every day anyway, right? So it's not really necessarily, so it's instructive. I think this exercise has been instructive for staff to think about, and I hope for the board to think about when we do get to goals, we have to be measurable. We have to be thinking about it, and probably putting a goal that says that we must abide by regulatory activities is not necessarily a goal. It's something that we need to do, but we will be doing that. Why don't you scan up a little bit? Are there any questions on the first one? Goal number 2, stewardship of district resources requires a collaborative and responsive relationship with our local and regional community. Again, overall, based on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different activities below it, it's implemented. I think that we, the district, have implemented this activity or this goal since 2016. The first one, maintain, develop leadership roles in CABI, mountain counties, and Association of California Water Agencies. This says partially implemented, And the reason for that is some of these organizations that are specifically listed in the goal from 2016, NID is no longer an affiliate with Mountain Counties Water Resource Association. We're not part of their organization, yet we are part of CABI, and we are part of Aqua. There are many other organizations in the region and throughout Northern California and California in general that we have become part of. So on the face value of what that goal says, we had to sort of put a partially implemented process there. Develop watershed programs. That's been implemented. We have an environmental resource program where we're actively working on watershed activities and different watershed activities. Coordinate with local, regional, state, and federal governments. Again, that's implemented. That will never be complete, by the way. That will never be complete. So it's implemented. So overall, this strategic goal is implemented. It's not complete, and there's no measurable aspect to it that I can give you. It's all very subjective. Okay, let's go up to 3. Goal 3, we're still in the 2016-2018 program, and there were 4 of these. Develop and manage our resources in a self-determining manner, protects and provides for local control of our community's most valuable asset, a fairly priced and available water supply. Overall, we're implemented. Maintain and strengthen reserves. We've implemented that. We're working on that as an action item. Acquire lands to protect watersheds, facilities, environment. I think that's implemented. We've been actively doing that over time. Acquire necessary PG&E assets. That was, I wasn't quite sure in 2016 what that really meant, to be honest with you. But I put partially implemented. The one asset that is now currently on the books is the South Yuba Canal. So that's really the only one in the Dutch Platte, Deer Creek Powerhouse. I'm not sure where that whole, what that meant back then. So it's kind of partially implemented. We're working towards it. There's some delay at South Yuba Canal, but we're working towards it. So right now, today, it's moving forward. Rich, do you have a question?
Yeah, a quick bit on the upper one.
Yeah.
On the transparency certification, partially implemented. I would think we're beyond that.
So
there's more implication, transparency.
So the way I read it is to the transparency certification. We did get that transparency certification for a few years. We haven't had it for a couple years. But I think we could argue either way that it's implemented or partially implemented. I just placed it partially just because it was implemented, and then there's a delay somewhere. We just haven't got that in the last couple years. But that was a goal, and just to put a number up here, again, I think these are all subjective, everybody. I could, if you have a
That's
question.
because we haven't applied for it.
We haven't applied for it.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm watching you.
Okay, strategic plan goal, number 4, the final one. We believe in the integration of proven practices and technologies enhances efficiency and reliability throughout the district. Most all of these have kind of received this partial implementation. Implement a new financial software package. We've started that process. We've run into some hiccups and some issues, so that leaves that partially implemented at the moment. Standardized software packages across business lines. I would almost say that should be changed probably to implemented. John might argue with me that it should be better than partially. It should be implemented because there are a number of software packages that the district utilizes, and I think John and his team are working the best they can to continue to strategize and standardize those packages across the district. Yet there are legacy programs that we have and legacy systems that are just difficult to really standardize across the system. So we're working on it.
So, Greg?
Yeah.
On this one particular, this one seems like it would be never completed because the technology is improving all the time. How would we do a measurable on this one, for instance, to know we are implemented?
John, do you have an answer to that?
I mean, that when I think of measurables, it gets a lot of subjectivity with some objectivity most of the time.
Yeah.
I feel that there's a lot of room for improvement here. I think we can standardize applications. I think we can standardize some of the applications, and it is measurable. And like I said, there's many applications in our environment. We can optimize it.
May I ask a question? So I could barely hear him, and I don't know how many folks back there can hear him, but I'll bet folks here can't hear him. So maybe we should speak up.
Yeah, so how about that?
Okay.
Great point. Because part of the reason why staff is in this room are for questions just like that. I don't know that answer. I'll probably call on John, right? And so maybe if I call on you for an answer to one of these, yeah, good point.
Stand up.
Stand up, speak up, so that this little gizmo can hear.
We also have a microphone if anyone would like to use it.
Okay. All right.
Oh, that's good.
Good idea.
I don't think, does everybody back there hear?
Brad, can you hear back there?
No, see, nobody can hear.
Okay.
Okay, so questions, if somebody has a question, please ask, and it goes for the public. If you have particular questions about this, please, press me on it, because the answer that's on the screen could not be true. Like I said, these are not, many of them are very subjective.
Yes.
John's gonna repeat what he said.
Okay, thanks.
Hear me?
Yeah.
So standardized software, so I think there's a lot of opportunity to standardize the software in our environment. We have a lot of legacy applications. There is a lot of, what I mean by that is there's a lot of software that is old and we need to get them upgraded and standardize them. There's other organizations, other districts and other entities that are using these updated software packages that we need to start implementing. So I think there's still some opportunity, and I think that we can get to that.
So would you say that, this is subjective or objective, when we come to, whether it's been implemented or not?
I think it's subjective.
Subject, okay.
I think Mr. Ross has a.
Mr. Ross, you have a comment?
So the terminology being used right now for metrics, maybe better benchmarking, performance indicators, and there's some standard terms that are used in the industry to show what an objective is that meets a goal, and then that objective is then a metric can be made, or a performance indicator can be easily made for the type of objective, because the objectives are what you're doing in order to meet goals. So, since I gave you 3 terms last meeting, and I printed out some additional terms that you could use to help have a shared lexicon that would enable you to understand how the strategic goals are going to be met with objectives and other actions. And those actions themselves are easily put into a metric form, much more than the goal itself. And so getting caught up on trying to make a metric for the goal is not necessarily something you want to try to get trapped with. You want to look at actions to meet the goal, and those things can be tracked and benchmarked.
Well, thanks. So you printed out a list for us?
I got 15 copies.
Oh, great.
Copies in here.
Okay, we'll take that.
Have them for the table.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Jennifer, Trevor.
I have a big Italian voice. So I think this is an answer to my question last time, so I appreciate the work. And this is not unusual outside of this industry, that when you come back and look at these, either they haven't been done, or something else has been done that was actually more important, but wasn't updated here. And I think that one of the things we should walk away from is that these need to be revisited, with a cadence. Maybe it's quarterly, yearly, whatever that cadence is, but 2 years, 4 years down the road to find out that something wasn't measurable doesn't help anybody. So
Right.
I would just strongly suggest that like quarterly cadence of is this started? If not, move on, and put a date when it is going to be started. And if it is started, do we need to adjust it so it is measured?
That's a great point. Thank you. Any other thoughts, till I jump to the next round of 6? And we'll go through these relatively quick, because it is on the website, and you all should have a copy at least. You can look at it on your phone. So this is from the 2019 process, where we kind of jumped off the 4 and recreated 6. Number 1 is very similar to the first goal from the 2016 to 2018 version. Continued health of the district is dependent upon the proactive management of our physical, natural, financial, and human resources. Overall, it's been implemented. Recruitment and retention program. So at the time, we identified an action item to be not just establish what was the word, a succession plan, but kind of focused it on a recruitment and retention program. Again, kind of labeled it as not started in all practical purposes. Review criteria in which the district prioritizes projects. I think we've done that. We've been working on a refined capital improvement project or process that Doug and his team and Kian have been identifying, and so I think we've been implementing that. I guess that's another one that will just never be complete. On an annual basis, we're going to be looking at how district prioritizes projects every year. In goal number 2, we stated to actively seek collaborative and responsive relationships with our local and regional communities to conserve, protect, and enhance district resources. Somewhat similar to the second goal of the first one, but wordsmithed a little differently. Overall, it's been implemented. There's an action item which is collaborate with our ag community to enhance fire protection, wildlife habitat, and food security. I think overall, that's been implemented. How measurable is it? Well, it's hard to tell. Probably measurable based on number of meetings, number of actions, number of board directions. I don't know, but that, I would say, in general, it is generally implemented. Collaborate with land use planners in investigating water resource storage options. I think by and large, that is not started, right? That is not something that's been the district's sort of go-to. We're not meeting with Nevada County, Placer County land use planners and defining how the planning and master planning is affected, or the water systems are affected by land use planning. So, I put that as a not started.
Greg?
Yes.
They haven't started it either. I mean, we could go meet with them and we'd have to initiate the whole process.
Yeah, fair enough. Yep. And again, remember, these are going to be goals that are going to be set for the district, and just as Jennifer had mentioned, these are going to be the strategic priorities and the direction that the board is giving staff, right? We didn't adopt this. This was adopted and it was in its current form, then perhaps there would have been an ongoing question from the board on every few months and say, hey, give us how often have you met with the county? What have you been doing? It hasn't really been a strategic priority. It wasn't adopted. So these strategic priorities, when we do adopt them, they are direction to staff to do and go and create and make happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Director Peterson.
Yes.
In response to Director Johansson's on that land use plan.
Grab that
Yep.
microphone, please.
Speak up.
Yeah, in response to the collaborative with land use planners on investigating water resources. It's not the land use planner's responsibility to investigate storage options. It's their responsibility to let us know their growth trends and what we need to plan for as far as we're developing. But I wouldn't think they would be actively involved in investigating storage options.
Right, they're not.
They're not.
Okay, good point. So let's go up to number 3. Okay, number 3 in the 2019 update was develop and manage our resources for local control of our community's most valuable assets. Overall, generally implemented. Protect and defend the district's water rights. Well, that's a great goal, and that's a great action item, and I think that's something that we do on an annual basis. Is that right, Chip?
I would say daily.
Yeah, daily. Is it ever complete?
No.
Right. Protect our environment and facilities by developing necessary plans to protect and enhance them. In general, I think that's an implemented. We all have to look at, we live in the forested landscapes in Nevada County, and down in, Placer, it's kind of dry and hot. So we have to understand what facilities we have, where they live and where they are. We gotta thin trees, we gotta watch out for wildfire, we gotta think about updating our facilities based on the natural environment and the physical environment. Yes?
Do we have operations and maintenance plans to guide the facilities operations and maintenance?
No, so remember, that's part of the tiering that will be done after the plan for water is completed, is the operations plan, watershed management plan, raw water treated, both plans.
We don't have one right now. How could it?
Not necessarily. By practice, we do those things. By some plan, I don't know that we have an actual.
Yeah, most of the work that we do, and maybe Chip and ops and maintenance can talk about it, but the plan itself isn't exactly put together all the time, but the practice is. We have many practices that we do on a daily basis, monthly and annual basis, that is to get to that goal. Maybe the plan is not quite there yet, but I would say that it's not complete.
Greg, we do have some plans in place, they're just old and we're in the process of updating them, and now we're going through the plan for water process. So we have a raw water master plan that was approved quite a few years ago, and now we're gonna start the process to update it. Now we're in the process of getting through the plan for water, and then we'll go back and update that, same with the treated water master plan. So there are documents, I bet some of them old and potentially outdated, that we do utilize.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions on that item? Number 4 is, stand up a little bit. Integrate established practices and technologies that enhance efficiency and reliability. Again, implemented, engage in innovations that develop best management practices. I think that's an ongoing process that ops and hydro are always, and engineering and maintenance, we're always looking at best management practices for everything we do in the field. So they're always identifying, innovating, and utilizing everything that we possibly can to be effective operationally in the field. Continue to look, yes?
Well, I'm keying in on reduce herbicide use to the extent possible, and we say implemented. What would be helpful going forward, I understand these are not adopted, would be to say, to give that some measurable, like, we use, 10 pounds of glyphosate, and we want to reduce that to 5, or whatever, but some sort of measurable metric.
X number of miles of canal per year to go towards the reduce its use of
glyphosate or whatever, copper.
Right.
So that would seem to be something that we can have this goal, and then underneath that, we would have, the specifics about what we hope to accomplish in that year, or in 5 years, or some time frame.
And that's a great point, and that's what I failed to sort of hit on, is all of these are well-meaning. And I think many of them, although we're not anticipating to adopt these carte blanche in this process, and quite frankly, we shouldn't, but when we go through and start developing goals and objectives, we should have those measurable success stories that we can report back to on a monthly or annual basis that says, yes, board, you said that you wanted in 4 years' time to increase, by 1 canal mile per year of non-herbicide use, right, or whatever it is, 15 miles. And then we can come back with that actual metric, and define it.
So one thing I just, as a quick observation, I want to point out is that the purpose of goals is to actually implement your strategic priority, which then is consistent with your mission and ultimately get to meet your future vision of what we want to be. The problem with most of these goals, and you're hearing it come up in the comments, is they're extremely vague. They have they're not detailed enough to have an actual consistent meeting amongst different users, and they're just not measurable. So, as Director Heck just stated, reduce herbicide use to the extent possible. That's just not a good goal, because I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Extent possible is defined by the person listening to it. In order for an agency to actually make real progress that moves the needle on performance and meeting our strategic priorities and eventually getting to be what our vision of ourselves is, you have to have goals that you can, that are concrete and actually can be implemented. Many of these are not. And that's where there's a lot of the confusion coming from, even in this conversation right now. Rich?
So I need to recheck the numbers, but I was told last meeting by someone new, I thought we had reduced our herbicide, glyphosate, by 80%.
That's not true.
I don't think that's true.
But the difference is the concentrate is much more potent. So you
That
have
could be
to
true.
factor up, is it 2 times more potent concentrated? But
So remember,
we have reduced our Roundup use.
remember what this exercise is for. The value of this exercise is to understand and inform us collectively about what makes a good goal and what makes not a good goal.
Right.
And it's not to
Yeah, I
talk about if we're right or wrong, or we're
Right.
done, or, because we could sit here all day and do it. I think the real value is in understanding why possibly some of these were implemented, why we're having disagreements right now on what they even mean and what we're doing. And, you know, we could talk all day, implemented, partially implemented, what does that mean? At the end of the day, I think we all agree there needs to be more concrete, measurable goals.
So just scan up to the last 2, and then, yep, nope, the other one. Just going back, maintain financially healthy district by having a sustainable and resilient budget. You know, that's itself a little, nebulous. And then finally, number 6, improve and protect the district's water supply, ensuring sustainability and reliability given the uncertainty of climate change. You know, obtain, utilize a downscalable global climate change model and applied it to the district. Haven't really done that. So it's partially implemented. I'm not even sure what a couple of those action items really mean and how to measure them, so it's really difficult to even put a name to it or a measurement to it. So, again, like Jennifer said, the purpose of this was not to go individually by each one and try to deflate or conflate what they might mean, but is to identify that the goals that we have on the books right now, that sort of the district in general and the staff and the public at large can look to, and that drives and decides our decisions on a given month, annual budget process, or 5-year outlook, are these. And if they're not measurable, and we can't put a document in place where we have a plan to meet X, Y, or Z, it's really difficult for staff to continue to follow a strategic plan if the goals and the measurables are really not there and they're squishy. So that's what we wanted to just get across today. Thank you, Harriet. Any other questions? Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I really would encourage everybody to look at the goals as they stand, and even these goals, if you're gonna change the goals, that's fine. If you're gonna make the goals more definite, that's fine. If you're gonna set targets instead of goals, then just call them targets within the goals. And you really need to look at the performance indicators that are associated in the district for such goals. So your last goal that you put up, I just took one of my terms out of here, and you can look through it and you can say, well, what thing in the district would be an indicator for the water supply and the reliability and the efficiency of it? It would be conveyance applied water, and the definition of conveyance applied water, and using less conveyance applied water to meet your goals would then become more efficient in your operations. And so there's many things that are objectives that you can meet that would be defined under each one of those goals, and some of them are even overlapped. And so it just takes a little bit of thinking about how each component of the operation actually fits to the goal, and then if that operation has a strong metric that's associated.
Good, thank you. Any other comments, thoughts on this item? Thank you. Move on to the next one.
All right, just for members of the public, we are having some technical difficulties with the chat function that we are trying to resolve. So in the meanwhile, if you have a comment, please raise your hand and we'll get to you, and we're trying to get the chat back. All right, next up is Mr. Jones again.
I'm back. I'm back. Okay, I'll come stand over here again. No, I'm gonna switch it up. I'm gonna come over here. So,
You know what, Grace? There's this little thing that you.
oh my gosh.
I don't know why it's left here, but that might be of assistance.
See if I need it.
I know. Well, it's kind of fun.
There's cats in the room. Okay, so let's pull up the document. Okay. So, NID conducted a general survey of the community through about 6 questions and 1 open-ended question that we sent out on between August 4th and roughly August 17th. It was created by NID staff. It was intended to be a relatively quick synopsis and a very brief and inexpensive way to get the temperature of many of our community on various issues, mostly regarding NID and this process of strategic planning. It was created in a relatively short period of time. We didn't have a fancy consultant that came in and gave us advice on what to say and what not to say. We used some of the questioning and some of the theory that we based on a 2018 community survey that we did from a company called Provolsky Research, who charged us quite a few dollars in order to put that survey together. It was helpful. Yet this was a process for us to just sort of get a light temperature of various entities and various people within the district with no particular process in mind. We created the 6 questions, and we created it on a Survey Monkey. We sent it out to roughly, what, Susan, 4,600 people, individual emails that we had. We have it posted on our website. We had it sent out through social media. Many people sent responses in. We got a 672 responses, which I think is a really interesting rate of return on a silly little survey that NID sent out via email, posted on our website, and put it through Facebook and social media, et cetera. Through that, we've got roughly, of those 670-ish, we've got a number of comments. Most of the survey was pick one or pick multiple items. A lot of the purpose of that, to be quite honest with you, is we really wanted to sort of pin people into a particular response. We've received a lot of comments after this, to be honest with you. A lot of interest in where did this survey come from? You know, what was the intent of the survey? It was skewed towards a particular outcome. I will tell you right now here is that there was no particular outcome that anybody intended for it to be skewed to. The data that we received from that survey is intended only for the board and the public to think about, geez, what data could be out there. I think, to be honest with you, the more important than the survey 6 questions themselves were the 386 comments that we received.
Yes.
Yeah.
We received roughly 300 and some odd comments. Susan spent all night putting those together in order to get them out for the board packet last week in order to identify kind of the flavor of many of those comments. And she broke them up into roughly 17 different sort of subcategories, which I was kind of blown away because that is not super easy to do when you read through many of these comments, is to try to identify what subcategory that was just created out of a whim. We didn't ask people to do a subcategory. We just said, you know, what the question, do you have anything more for us? And those comments really, they ranged from everything to we completely rigged this thing to reflect a particular project or a particular outcome, to, my gosh, NID, you're doing the best job since sliced bread, and keep it up. Thank you very much. Good work. So we have the gambit of it all. And And we recognize that it threw some people. It was not intended to do that. So with that, I think I'll go through the survey answers because I think they're informative. They might not be scientific. They certainly are not plus or minus any scientific categorized mentality. I don't have demographics. I don't have regional support. I don't know where all these responses came from. They could be coming from Uruguay. They could be coming from Germany. I don't know. But we got 670 plus responses. Many of the responses, again, they were sort of defined. You chose one, or you chose three things, or you chose as many as you possibly could. Could we have done better? I think we certainly could have, for sure. If we wanted more time and more energy and more funding to put into it, I think, and it might be something that we might want to do again to help the board understand certain things that we want to drill into. But that's a caveat to the beginning of the slide presentation and the survey results, because I do understand that a lot of people had some, based on the comments and based on some of the things that we've received, some very legitimate concerns about it. But I think the one thing that I want to instruct to the board right here is that these data results of the 6 questions are not intended to be influential in any decision that we move forward in the strategic planning or plan for water process. What was surprising to us was the 385 written comments, and I think those are going to be more instructive to the board.
Yes.
To read through them on your own and choose, you know, what are interesting and what are not. And that's kind of how I identified throughout reading through the comments and the survey. I'm certainly not going to go through all 385 comments, just so you know. That's not the intent of this. We're going to go through some of the survey numbers, which are in the packet, and they're on the website for those of you who are on the website. Need the white one? I could just say advance. I could just say next slide, because that one doesn't have one of the fancy red things, whether I need it or not. Okay, so again, I told you that to get a snapshot of customers and residents' view about water and NID in general, we had 6 questions. We had 682 respondents, 348 comments out of those 682. And again, it went to, what'd you say, 4,600? Individual emails. So not a bad response rate as far as surveys, online survey monkeys go. Next slide. Okay, question 1. And again, we sort of pigeoned folks to not have an other question. That was just going to be too much for us to process and define, and so we only did that open-ended question at the last, not the other 6 that we're moving through. We asked, what is the most important objective that NID should focus on in the future? The 3 responses were protection of the environment and watershed, water supply reliability and sustainability, and low water rates. So based on those who responded, about 73% identified number 2. You can see the bar graph here. And again, it just reflected the interest of the people who were reflecting the survey without any other prodding of any other information. We sent out no background. We only said that we are conducting a strategic plan process throughout our plan for water. We had links certainly to the NID website, but there was no other information that we supplied to them for background material, or you should read through that, or you should read through this. So some folks, as in the comments, weren't even NID customers. Some people didn't really pay attention to NID all that much. But in this particular question, water supply, reliability, and sustainability is paramount. And you know, it's interesting that it shouldn't really surprise us. I mean, if we don't provide sustainable and reliable water to our customers, what are we, right? So I didn't think I thought that was an interesting response, and it kind of reflects the district in general. Next slide. Question 2, water is a finite resource. Supply is limited. I think that's a fair statement to say. To you, what are the 2 most important uses of water? Check 2 boxes. So here we ask people to check 2 boxes. And we put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 factors up there. 90, well, so if anybody did the math on some of these, you're going to recognize that that a couple of these, like the first one, went out to 117% of the eligible respondents could have, responded. So something was up with that particular question in terms of somebody was able to check 2 boxes. Most people only checked 1, but a few people checked 2. Here, the 90%, that adds up to a little bit more than 100%, right? So there's a reason for that. It's because we asked, it actually, all that adds up is to 199%. So most everybody checked 2 boxes. There was probably 1 or 2 or 4 people that only checked 1 box. So it's 200% because we've asked them to do 2 responses. So overwhelmingly, in this we had 90, roughly half of everybody definitely checked the domestic drinking and household is a important use of water, and the second one in this process was the agriculture, right? So it just gives a flavor. Third at 25% is for the environment. So it's really kind of an indicator, but again, it doesn't really surprise me that in this environment, in this region, that we supply water where a majority of our water goes to our irrigation customers, our raw water customers, yet we have a state mandate to supply drinking water to our treated water customers, that those 2 necessarily come to the top of the people that responded. Next slide. So here we asked for 3. You added all those percentages up, you'll get 298%. So most people put 3 elements. A few people, looks like they only put 2. What are the 3 greatest challenges regarding water? And this, without any prodding, without any information, these people just based on their own volition, from what I would assume is increasing demand on supply. Some of these sort of are overlapping. Some of these answers are sort of somewhat the same, and they all have some element within them. So it again isn't perfect, but it gives an indication that a lot of people are thinking there's an increase of demand on supply. Not surprising in that for the drought throughout California, people are understanding that, people are thinking about that. Demand is being reduced, while supply is not. Climate change impacts, that sort of, I think people have that in their mind, that they're understanding that there are climate change impacts to the supply of water that we have in order to deliver water appropriately to the number of demand individuals and organizations and entities that we need to deliver water to every day. Climate change has an implication to that. And people, I think, are understanding that. Not enough water, right? Water quality. Chad doesn't want to hear about water quality bad, but he, the need for more storage facilities is up there in terms of people put their greatest challenge regarding water on that list. The next slide. Please indicate whether you are satisfied with NID's efforts, services which you are satisfied. So a lot of responses that came out of the last question in terms of who, when people were just writing. There's some people that didn't really understand what services NID provides. A lot of people, there's a handful of, responses that said, I'm not even a customer. Thanks for the information. Thanks for the survey. I don't know what services you provide. So in a lot of ways, that's instructive of us too, to be like, okay, well, we got to get our word out there. People have to understand what kind of services we provide, because that's an important factor in getting that information out there. You know, again, I don't think that that should be a surprise, where 84% of everybody responded at the highest level with providing a reliable water source. Whichever way you do it, NID, however you do it, provide a reliable water source. I can either be in the room and help you do that, or I don't care how you do that. I'm a single parent and I'm working my tail off every day. I just need to turn on the tap and I got water. I need to turn on my irrigation so that my garden has water. Just provide the darn reliable service. Think, what are some of the other higher ones? Protect water supply from contamination and pollutants. I think that's valuable. I think that's, sure, absolutely. Ensure an adequate water supply now and in the future. Well, that's why we're all here today. That's why we're planning this process. That's what we're doing. And of course, that doesn't, people build their lives here. They build farms and ranches, and they have their schools and their children and their grandkids. Of course, people want an adequate water supply, and that's what NID's been doing for 101 years. And so we should continue to do that. Keep the water system in good condition through timely repairs and maintenance. 51 or 383 people said that. Well, that just goes right to our capital improvement program. That goes right to Doug's work and what Kean's doing in hydro and what Chip's doing in operations and maintenance. We have to ensure that we have enough, an adequate source of revenue and funds and capacity within our staff to keep our systems going. Next slide. Last couple are sort of, please indicate whether you are satisfied with NID's efforts. Wait, did we do that one? Next slide.
How much you're paying.
Thinking about how much you pay. So this goes to pay. This was a direct, the last two came directly from that 2018 survey that were just verbatim. We pulled those over. We've got just about right. So we've got a blue line here about just about right. So there's a value, or there's a judgment statement there from people thinking. And of course, most people would say, yeah, I'm paying too much. What do you say when you go to the gas tank? I'm paying too much, right? Never just about right, and it's never too little. Right. Although 20 people were bold enough to say that. Thank you to those 20 people. That's who they are. But hey, next slide. And then this one was just about value. So the difference between cost and value. The value, we've got a majority of people saying, yeah, the value that I pay for water is good, considering the services and the ability that you guys do. So the value in this one generally is good. And we've got, another in close second is a very good value. So we've got a lot of people thinking, hey, I pay what I pay, and it's a good value for the services and the water that I get. So it's informative. It's not definitive. This is not a process where we have any statistical relevance that is necessary, but I think it is part of an information gathering session. It's data that this group, the public in here, the public at home, the board, the staff can use moving forward or not. And so that's sort of the interest of what we did. So next slide. Here's the 17 different sort of categories. Those are listed in the web packet on the board. Susan, thanks again for going through that and really sort of categorizing. Some of them are definitely crossover, and again, it's not definitive. It's not some metric that we had. It's that we created these particular categories. It was just as we were reading through these, like themes just started emerging, and it makes sense. And this was a very generic question. What would you like to tell NID? Anything under the world. Anything under the world. And that's sort of how they fell out. And we'll continue to revamp maybe or revise, but I think we're going to leave it like this. It's on a nice PDF. You can search it on the website. You can search, trails and berms, and you can see the 7 comments that were made that were sort of like apropos to trails and berms. Infrastructure, and then you can drill down and see it. So that was our thought in trying to keep it so that the public and the board didn't have to look at every single every single question and read through it and understand what it meant, so this was our attempt to try to put it in more of a categorization process. And again, thanks, Susan, for doing that. It's on the website now. Everybody can go look at it and read through them as much as you want. Utilize them for, the benefit that you need. But I'm not going to go through 348 questions, or comments, I should say.
Yeah, one of the things we noticed that came out in the comments is there was a number of comments that were based off of misperception or rumor. So what we are going to do is put together kind of an FAQ to answer a lot of those comments or address them. And I think this can be used as a tool to help us provide information on topics that people may not have all the information they need to be well informed. So I think that is definitely another benefit. Does anybody have any comments on the public survey? The public survey is intended as one piece of information to inform this process. As Greg stated, it really is intended to kind of take the temperature of the unrepresented ratepayers, those that are not represented by a special stakeholder group. And so is there anybody, staff, board members, public, you want to talk about the survey a little bit more? Here.
Now, I would just like to acknowledge NID's efforts in this area. From my observation of the previous planning effort, there was not, I think, and I'm speaking of both the SWOT analysis and engaging stakeholders as well as the survey. So it's oftentimes easy for organizations to look internally and kind of close off data coming in a planning effort, and I think NID has done the opposite with this process. For me, I learned a tremendous amount from those 600 respondents. What they perceive about the relationship in the environment and the misunderstanding about environmental flows, and how we need to modify our messages to be able to harmonize things. I took, 4 pages of notes on those customers. So any customer who's on participating, I paid attention to what you had to say. I don't minimize it. Having worked with a lot of surveys in my career, you can have the most vetted survey on the planet and still have people complain about it. So you can complain, but I've seen highly vetted, highly scientific surveys people still complain about. I think there's a lot of things to take away about pricing. Although people are concerned about prices, what they want is reliability and high quality water and have adequate storage for the future. So I think this really helps us inform and think about, combined with our SWOT analysis, to be thinking about these perspectives. So I'm super excited to have this and appreciate the time and effort that went into it.
Agreed, Karen, well said. And I appreciated that this survey represented not, as has been said by others, not the stakeholders, not our environmental friends, and not our building friends, and not our, business friends. You look at all the different stakeholders, these were just customers, the folks who we serve every day. And so it was really a breath of fresh air for me to go through these comments and see how do they perceive us and what's important to them, and without having an agenda for one thing or another. So I really appreciated it. Thank you for the work. Thank you, Susan.
Any comments from the online community? Anybody out there? Is there any?
Yeah, and
raise an hand.
Raise your hand, because unfortunately our chat function is not working. Not seeing anyone. How are you, Chris?
I'm not seeing one.
Anyone in the public? Yes, sir.
Can you go to the microphone so we can catch you?
Matthew Coulter, Grass Valley. Yes, you can skew a survey any way you want. I was just at the Board of Supervisors all morning listening to watershed talk and how many millions of dollars are going to protect watershed up at Truckee, right? But then we come down here to the West Slope, and we see Loma Rica Ranch, we see the sewage plants, we see all this stuff being dumped into Wolf Creek, being picked up by the tar ditch and resold downstream. I don't understand how NID can relinquish its responsibility just because the water runs through a city limit. Thank you.
All right, anybody else? And I can also come to you in the audience if you don't want to get up. Brad, comment? Deb?
I think it's pretty impressive that 650 people responded, and 85% said that it was a good value or better. And that's pretty impressive. Right? You just never pack it in and say it's good, but 85% for any business is really.
Yeah, I think one thing that was interesting to note is that people are definitely more concerned about water supply and a sustainable water supply. But I also think that's a function of what the greater conversation in the state right now, right? We are, and frankly, the entire western United States, there's a lot of severe water issues right now. And so I wasn't overly surprised to see more interest in that particular topic, just given the elevated conversation and folks' real concerns about the future of water that are kind of coming out at the statewide level. Might not be affecting us as much, but are affecting the rest of the state. Laura, did you have anything to add? Nope? Okay. Anyone else? All right, so if we're done with this topic, we're going to take a really quick snack break, and then we're going to move on to the public spot. So stretch your legs, eat some cookies so they don't come back with us, please. So, Zoom, if you desire to use the chat function, we recommend that you log out of the Zoom and re-log back in. And then it should be open to you.
Oh.
Finally fixed it.
Probably got in trouble with Yeah, I got kicked out.
I like how I talk to the screen, my back's to the camera. Okay, so next up is we have the public SWOT presentations. So we did send out, Greg, Susan, how many public SWOTs did we send out? We sent out 30 requests for public SWOTs to be completed, and these were to a variety of different stakeholder groups, and we also offered them an opportunity to present their SWOT, if they so desired, to this group. We only received 5 SWOTs back. So those individuals are going to have the opportunity to review their SWOT, and after we're done with that, if you're presenting a SWOT, we will then ask questions of you, get clarification, and then after that, we'll kind of go into staff SWOT and then our group activity. So as I stated earlier, the purpose of the SWOT is really to start fleshing out what our strategic priorities are. And the most beneficial part of any SWOT is to really do a deep dive on the opportunities, right? So NID strengths are typically internal to the organization. NID weaknesses are also internal to the organization. And our ID opportunities and threats are external. So the idea being is that you essentially want to try to address your strengths or your weaknesses with opportunities and your threats with opportunities. So we will go through that exercise of distilling those down, and then those will be parlayed into future strategic priorities. And so very first up, for presenting of the SWOT analysis, we have Mr. Hoffler, who I do not believe is presenting in person. Is that correct, Susan? Yes. And so Mr. Hoffler, he did, you want to bring it here? Okay. So I'll just review it for you really quick. It's also included in your packet. It's a very short one. So Mr. Hoffler, who is a member of the Friends of Auburn Ravine, who was not submitting on behalf of the Friends of Auburn Ravine, he wanted me to let everybody know that. So his identified opportunity was find ways to gather, store, distribute water that also benefit fish and wildlife. Threats, he came up with a threat, he wasn't quite sure it was true, underfunded retirement plans, aging infrastructure, and underfunded maintenance. And then his identified strengths were project management, engineering, and spirit of service. And weaknesses were more kind of questions. So he asked, is each line of business carrying its own weight? Are income and expenses properly segmented for raw water, treated water, hydro, recreation, etc.? And are all charges for all types of raw water customers posted for the public to see? And so, does anybody have questions? That was a very brief one, but I did want to make sure to review it since Mr. Hoffler took the time to submit it. Okay.
Jen, I have just a question for you. It has been I heard you say this, but I want to just restate it for my own understanding. Is that your intent then, so in this example, this gentleman said, are income and expenses properly segmented and so on. Will then we provide a response to that person, or will these just be integrated in our strategic plan? I mean, do these folks who took this time get a response? I guess is the first question.
Not really, but I can reach out to Mr. Hoffler in particular. The SWOT exercise doesn't intend to actually be questions. It's intended to be more of statements. But I have a good relationship with Mr. Hoffler, so I'm happy to talk to him about it. The real intent is to, once we go through and understand the strengths and weaknesses and the threats and opportunities, is to start distilling down the opportunities that are intended to address these threats and weaknesses.
The threats, okay.
We're going to review the weaknesses and threats, but we don't want to spend too much time dwelling on them and bickering about them, because frankly, in a strategic planning process, it's good to visit them to understand where you're at. But in order to figure out how to get where you want to be, we really need to focus on those future opportunities. So that will be our main focus.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Sierra Harvest. Is anyone from Sierra Harvest here? I don't. And they also can present remotely if they like. I don't see. Okay. So I can kind of review this one as well. It is also in your packet. So I'll kind of go through this quickly. So NIV strength, engagement with local stakeholders, agencies, and organizations via master plan for water process. Irrigation for agriculture as a core mission of the district. General manager and talented staff at NID. Legacy of delivering water through the dry season. An updated system communicating with customers and the public, online billing, social media, websites. These are all strengths. And then canal system offers community recreational opportunities that are highly valued. So weaknesses, unpredictable water delivery for agriculture. And does everybody know what Sierra Harvest is? They are an organization that essentially represents small agricultural businesses. And they have a really, really good advocacy and education arm to them, where they really try to shepherd in farmers that are just starting out and provide them all the information and support they can to help them be successful. So they are a great partner to NID and partner with us on educational matters, so we greatly appreciate their partnership.
I'm seeing some in the attendee list too from Sierra Harvest.
Oh, there's a couple of people from Sierra Harvest in the attendee list, so they can jump in at any time that they'd like to. Raise your hand. NID weakness, inefficient, outdated water delivery system, inability of system to prioritize water delivery for critical agriculture, use of herbicides and other pesticides known to be harmful to human and ecosystem health, customer perception to use entire allotment, i.e. use it or lose it, agricultural customer mistrust, relying on customer goodwill for conservation, underwhelming messaging and PR marketing, focus on the need to conserve water, the need for dams versus the threat dams posed to ecosystems, community, and cultural resources. The NID opportunities, improve authentic social media engagement, no more stock photos. So that is a good one. Provide real-time updates. Focus on the role of local food agriculture for community health and well-being. Include an agricultural liaison and staff to understand the needs, challenges, and successes of regional farmers and ranchers. Invest in a new, efficient, climate-smart system of water delivery. Utilize the system with the ability to prioritize water delivery for agriculture. Build regional collaborations and network upon common ground. Use infographics and customer stories to engage and educate the public on conservation, the NID system, and the contribution that irrigated agriculture has on community health. Invest in research on the impact that irrigated working lands have on watershed health and watershed conservation. Those are all opportunities. And then threats, climate chaos, ditto that one. Ongoing droughts, urbanization, development, and disjointed regional planning. Declining watershed health, connecting to a younger audience. Polarization, i.e. environmentalists versus ranchers versus NID versus river advocates. The public perception of wasteful investing and property acquisition for the dam. Those were the threats. Anybody have any questions, comments? Those from our friends at Sierra Harvest. Does anyone from remotely would like to comment? Okay. Next up, we have...
Molly,
oh, there we go, Molly.
Hey everyone, I just wanted, hi, can you hear me, Jennifer?
Sure can, thank you. Let me see if I can turn this out.
Okay, great. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to participate in this.
We appreciate your participation and all of your support and partnership. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
you, Molly.
Thank you, Molly.
All right, next up we have a SWOT that was prepared and submitted by the Friends of the Bear River. Do we have anybody from the Friends of the Bear River? Otis, Diana? All right, Otis, raise your hand. Otis, would you like to present your own SWOT? We're unmuting you. He did raise his hand. Otis, are you wanting to speak?
There we go. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. We had quite an extensive list. I'm not certain it's useful just to go through the list, as I think people can actually read it. I think it's useful to know that the 9 people that were participating were long-term residents. I think the total number of residential years were well over 400 years of local residency, mostly in the Bear River watershed. One was outside the watershed, I think. And so, having been attentive over half a century apiece, I think that the list came quite easily to a lot of people because they've been around a long time and they've been paying attention. So I'll leave that for people to actually read on their own. The opportunities are kind of interesting. It's a very long list. People see a lot of opportunity. Almost all of the opportunities involve collaborations and partnerships. And I think the opportunities that we were looking at as a group indicated that people think that the opportunities lie more, that the opportunities are culturally and regionally bigger than NID as a utility that's just been delivering irrigation water and customers' domestic water. There are a lot of different opportunities for a lot of much wider cultural activities and watershed management activities. So with that, I would, one of the useful things. I mean, I've worked as a facilitator for quite a long time. Often it's useful for the various groups to further massage these lists and prioritize them. Particularly, it's interesting when you prioritize lists that were developed by the board and lists that were developed by the staff. Because the board and the staff, and likewise, agricultural groups or environmental groups or a group like this, which is very much place-based and residential-based, they're all going to have a very different set of priorities, a very different set of values that are elucidated by a further prioritization process. So these SWOTs are, if they are just added to a big long list, not as useful as they can be or should be. So if, I asked many of the ones who participated if they'd be willing to do a prioritization of this rather long list, and they would be if NID would like to have that. But I would certainly suggest that when you do a list, the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats as seen by the board culture and by the staff culture and by the customer cultures are all quite different and could be more informative if they were further massaged by some kind of a process. And with that, I think people have it all in hand and they can read the individual things that were mentioned.
All right, perfect. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Wallen regarding their SWOT? Anyone, our friends at home? Okay. So next up, we have the Contractors Association of Barbara. Would you like to present your SWOT?
Oh, sure. I don't have a copy.
Oh, I can give you one right here.
Yeah, my version.
Here we go. Here you go. Okay. you wanna use the microphone, you can do wherever you want.
I think I have a pretty loud voice.
Well, or maybe it's a dais over here?
Or, yeah, or you can come up by the table if you wanna talk to the crowd. Whatever you would like.
To look at people.
All right, let's do it. Come up to the hot seat.
Talking to.
We like somebody else in the hot seat besides that.
So you won't be surprised that this is pretty much reflective of the development community, so, and we, do a lot of business with NID.
The microphone, please.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I thought I
Thank
had
you.
a loud voice, but I guess I don't. So the strength, obviously, I think we all agree is the delivery of reliable, clean water, to treated water users and raw water users. We feel like you have really good staff, including a very capable general manager. User fees are competitive, and you're strategically located for electrical generation and water storage. So, and you have some significant historic easements and conveyance facilities. And, you know, our developers find that your facility maps and street maps are excellent. So on NID weaknesses, NID doesn't look at development as an opportunity to provide water and upgrade aging facilities and collect significant fees. Very little master planning to identify deficits and where future development will go to identify upgrades that will be needed in the future. So, I do threats first or opportunities?
Threats first.
Aging infrastructure, climate change, inconsistent precipitation and snowpack regulation, the annual loss of storage capacity due to sediment collection, and the threat to water rights and the state diverting water. So some of the opportunities that we see is to look at developing public-private partnerships to help with the aging infrastructure, work with the city of Grass Valley for more reasonable development patterns based on existing infrastructure. And I think I saw this on the NID SWOT, was develop a master plan that includes expansion of water lines and hydrants throughout NID's service area. Scan all your as-bills for users to access online. Empower staff to make good decisions to create more consistency. Streamline the easement process with use of blanket easements prior to final subdivision, recordation of parcel maps. And streamline development process to make more user-friendly. Thank you, that's all.
Does anyone have any questions for Barbara?
On the previous page under, I think, under
I don't think anyone can hear you, Karen.
Karen has a question regarding weaknesses. Go up.
I'll read it. Could you talk a little bit more about NID doesn't look at development as an opportunity to provide water and upgrade aging facilities and collect significant fees? I'm curious about that perspective.
So I asked one of our developers to give me a good example of what that might look like. And we all know that Rincon Del Rio at some point in our life is gonna come online. And it would be looking at that development and saying, what are the opportunities for upsizing pipes, what needs to be upgraded in that area to provide services to a wider, water users, right? So Loma Rica had that opportunity. So instead of waiting for them to start developing it, to look at it as, that project was approved and looking at, well, what's the opportunity here for upgrading some aged infrastructure, working with the developer you know, to do that. So when they do public service, you already know what the opportunity is. That helps?
Yeah, thank you.
I have a comment to that, Barbara. I really agree with most of what you said, not only in the weaknesses, but in opportunities. And most of it, though, in my head, goes back to coordinating with land use, right? You know, if we had somebody whose job was to coordinate or be a representative of NID in you know, to the planning department in the county, so we could see in a way advance, and maybe we do, maybe Chip, maybe that we already are doing that, but anyway, I just see that as a better coordination with the land use, both in the city of Grass Valley and the county, because that's where the development applications start, and then we don't often get word of it until it's kind of down the road a little bit. So it seems like having a liaison would be a good thing.
You know, in the city of Grass Valley, some of your infrastructure in there, the water lines are aged. And,
oh, yeah.
You know, with the RV park that's going in, and Doug would know this, you know, there was some real issues with the size of the pipe and the water,
and the fire flow.
Water,
yeah.
The fire flow is a huge issue that's becoming a real hindrance to development. Mm-hmm. And putting it in areas that we want that development, right? Because, you know, you know, all of that infrastructure is aged and, you know, needs to be upgraded. So looking at those opportunities.
Yeah, one of the challenges we face as a water district as compared to a city or a county who actually has land use authority is we are just one removed, right? So a typical city, when they're experiencing development, they will do a feed study for all future infrastructure needs that is based off of the future build out of their general plan.
Right.
So they'll look at their general plan densities, uses, and then they'll essentially, on a high level, lay out all this infrastructure, and then that's how they set their fees. One of our challenges is, right, we have multiple land use agencies within our jurisdiction. So we're just a little bit removed, but we are currently starting a new fee study for new connection fees. And so those will be the things that we have to start thinking about. But what will even help even more is when we go through the master planning efforts, once the plan for water is completed. So that's also where those master plans feed into. So it is certainly an area, opportunity for improvement.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right. Any more questions for Barbara before she sneaks? Oh, sorry, Barbara. Sneaks away. We have one last SWOT, and this is a joint SWOT that was prepared by Circle and the Foothill Water Network. And I know that Tracy is here, and we have some backups as well.
Sure. I'm going to go here to the microphone.
Whatever you'd like to do.
I just put my papers down. I'd rather face you guys, but I think this will work out better for me. Plus, I need glasses and so. Hi, everyone. Tracy Sheehan, Foothills Water Network. Thank you for this opportunity tonight. I think this exercise is so important to start strategic planning, and for a variety of reasons. The first one is for us to all be in a room and to be able to give our views and our perceptions of what we see in the position from where we are, right? So this is giving everyone a good sense of that. And I heard from the beginning from Greg that they learned during the community survey that they felt there were a lot of maybe misunderstandings and that an FAQ would be developed. And I think that's a great idea. And I'm going to get to that. I have that here, even though it's not recorded, because it immediately went down as an opportunity for me. So thank you. I think the real meat of this exercise is the opportunities here. And so we're going to focus on that. But because we did take some time to look at the strengths and weaknesses, I'm going to just go through those as well. So, gosh, I need better glasses. I had cataract surgery. It's doing nothing. Okay, so first of all, we really do want to look at the opportunities immediately ahead. We can see that NID can position itself to be more of a forward-looking special district. Let's look at the strengths first to see how you can play on those from how we see it. And it's not quite organized the way that we submitted. I did more of a higher level presentation, but hopefully it'll jump out. So under strengths, we put primarily water availability and also an engaged community. So water availability, NID has senior water rights, which are great. The other thing is you're at the top of the watershed in the headwaters region. That gives you a secure source of water, and it gives you excellent water quality. Also, water reliability. NID receives water from what is considered a water-rich region of the state. This isn't the year that we want to be in the Central Valley. Also, NID has an extensive canal distribution system, but that can also be a weakness, and I'll touch on that later. Another important piece I haven't heard yet tonight, actually I think I heard a little bit from Sierra Harvest, is that we have an engaged community here with an incredible skill set that they want to give and help this effort and also help NID. So when you think about it, NID is already progressing towards this goal with a plan for water, with a stakeholder group and taking all of this public input. Now, what we need to do is make sure that it's used wisely, right? And think through those systems of how a stakeholder group is used and how the public can give input. So for example, tonight, if we're giving ideas on potential opportunities or weaknesses or threats, how will those be reported back to the public? And how might they be reflected or not reflected in a strategic plan? This is a way that we can keep those communication channels going and have a back and forth communication. So important parts of the community. NID is an important community contributor and an employer. NID has the community's attention. We have tons of people in the room on back to school night. Good job, everyone. NID has strong customer service. And NID draws on the community resources from experts that are in the community that are available to them. That's a good strength. An external strength in the community is that you have good recreation facilities, including an extensive canal system for public lands. So next up that we think is a strength is that NID has created replicable models for watershed management. So think about that. In some of your key areas that you consider threats, you now have models, whether it's COMBI and mercury removal and removing sediment, whether it's forest health and what's happened on Scotts Flat, or whether it's meadow restoration. And all of these are innovative strategies that are going to be key for climate change. And they're the key areas of climate change. So you've got good replicable, gosh, why did I choose that word? Good replicable models to draw on and then expand on. And be a model for the rest of the Sierra, I might add. So there's a good start there. Good job. All right, so let's move on to some of the threats. So threats, well, everyone's talked about climate change and we have a list here. We have climate change impacts to water availability, the increased boom or bust cycles, changing to more rain than snow, water arriving in larger or fewer larger storms. I mean, this goes on and on, less predictability. Also, what I didn't hear though, with increased wildfire risk and impacts to delivery, the infrastructure and delivery and the integrity of the watershed and health might be threatened. Also, system security, vulnerable infrastructure, cybersecurity, and water theft, something we used to hear a lot about during some relicensing meetings I went to. And finally, water quality. Something that's new and upcoming that I'm learning about is more about tire wear, salts, heavy metals, potential mine spills, and those potential threats to NID's water quality. I think I've run through the weaknesses, so it's kind of getting a little repetitive, but vulnerable infrastructure, you have an aging wood and earth canal system that's vulnerable to fire, leakage, failure, et cetera, et cetera. Another weakness, though, that we've heard a bit about is inadequate data collection and resolution. And I think that's also a big opportunity for NID. It's something that's been on the horizon for a while, and NID has talked about it, and board members have talked about their interest in looking at that, and I think we have an opportunity to do it. I'm gonna put down one more operational concern, and I'm not the expert, but, herbicide and pesticide use in canals, having a notification system, that might be an opportunity. Sorry, am I under threat? But, yes, let's put that in there as well. Okay, so let's move on to opportunities. So first of all, we believe that NID should embrace innovative management strategies. First, you need to set the groundwork to do that, though. So an opportunity is to utilize science to make better decisions regarding storage opportunities, and that's happening with the Plan for Water. I think NID has an opportunity to do more education, rebates, outreach for water conservation measures, and Sierra Harvest mentioned those as well. I think NID has an opportunity to pursue grant funding for rebate programs, domestic and agricultural conservation incentives. And then also, in terms of innovative strategies to pursue forward-looking means of water distribution, such as distributed storage strategies. You can build on that groundwork by looking then at some conservation issues. First is to embrace salmon in the upper watershed for forest health, which is something that's happening with other agencies. And in doing so, you can pursue collaboration with the environmental groups. Groundwater is an opportunity to re-engage and take a leadership role, embracing the West Placer groundwater injection and storage. And then also an opportunity is something you already have in the works and implementing, which is the Hemp Hill fish passage improvements. Finally, there's Bear River Park, and that's kind of a new concept, but knowing that NID has a lot of land around Bear River and is an owner, there are things that you can do to increase access and recreation to Bear River. And I think that's it. So I'm with the Foothills Water Network. We've worked to prepare this SWOT with Circle. Melinda's not here, but I want to also give it to George Olive, who's the chair of the board of Circle, and maybe he'll have more on opportunities.
Tracy, just briefly to say that Circle's very interested in strengthening collaborative work with NID. The array of nonprofits working on the environment in Nevada County is quite remarkable. There's some very strong people who are interested in NID's work, and the wider NID opens its doors to input and resources from the community, more helpful information you're going to get. So we appreciate your efforts in the Plan for Water work and these kinds of meetings. Wish there were more people here. But the South Yuba River Citizens League is very, very interested in as many collaborative chunks of work as we can do. Thank you.
All right, I know, looks like Diana has her hand raised. Diana, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself? Diana?
I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you so much, Circle to the Hill Network.
Yeah, I want to thank Tracy for showing up in person to present the SWOT and everything. And
Yeah.
I think I have one question. And conservation of water in agriculture on the lands, do you think that will result in a decreased demand for that water?
Well, no, I'm not saying that will decrease the demand. I'm just saying generally that we all want to embrace conservation. Not a judgment call on how well it's being done or not. It's the idea of actually going through and thinking about what can be done in terms of conservation and raw water. And also actually have a good handle on how the water is being used within what's considered raw water for commercial agricultural purposes. And again, not a judgment on that's good use or bad use. It's just knowing the data.
Right.
So that you
want to make the point that, my experience, that when you conserve water and get the most efficient irrigation system going, you farm more land. So you use an equal amount of water, you're just able to open up more land, have more production. And the other thing is, it's not part of NID, but on the ag zone, there's so much environment, so much wildlife habitat. So when ag water suddenly becomes environmental water, but it creates the habitat. So I just want to say that I don't see a lot of waste. You might see water running, but it's supporting something, some species, some habitat, and it has worked incredibly well in Nevada County, Placer County. It's a very unique system. So that's really on the backs of the ranchers and farmers. I just wanted to balance that with streams and the other watersheds that are normally talked about. We have a watershed and environment out there that's just world class. So I'd like to talk to you more about that.
All right, any more questions or comments?
Yes, I'd like to make one. When you do work with water use and efficiency in the use of water, you can have that water for resiliency. So you may choose not to farm more land with that water, but you can have it as part of the redundancy and resiliency that makes you stronger in a drought situation. It's not always about that you're going to grow more with it, but that you can use it more wisely.
Correct, but with the new status, the new survey that just came out this morning, 3 times the amount of land was not planted this year in America than it was last year. So about 6.5 million acres was not planted because of weather, no water, drought. So they're starting to look at food security. So the tendency is the water-rich areas are going to have to grow more to make up for that, because there will be a shortage. Or, I'll take your point, Michael, resiliency is great. You know, habitat is great.
So you'll find a definition of agriculture in Nevada County right in your first page.
Yeah, I think.
Not my definition, that's England County.
Yeah.
So when we talk about agriculture in these counties, we need to be particular. It's not just a raw water customer. It's you're making food or fiber, and if that food or fiber is being used for the local food security, that's even better. But if it's not, if it's being used to export water for a commodity, then we also need to know that. And so having extra water to use for exporting water as a commodity is different than providing food security for the local and regional area.
All right, I think,
We have your preference.
yes, good conversation. I really like the two kind of different points of view. You know, that's how good public policy is made. Okay, any more questions before we move on? Tracy, a huge thank you so much for taking the time, and Circle. I really, really appreciate it. It means a lot, all of your support through this effort. So now we are going to move on to the staff SWOT, and Chip is going to lead that discussion. So this SWOT was prepared by basically the leadership team you see here today. So this consists of our leadership team within the district, and we did one SWOT because we are one district, so we thought it would be appropriate. Chip, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and this is what happens when you miss a meeting. To do the presentation.
That's right.
That is very true.
The election.
And as I went through the SWOT analysis, I realized we are our own harshest critics because our strength is by far the shortest list. That's okay though. All right, I'll try to go through these fairly quickly and give a little brief explanation where needed. But we'll start with NID strength, and our strength, as has been heard by others tonight, is our water rights. We have very senior water rights. We have roughly 53 of them, and over half are pre-14 water rights, which is pretty cool. Some of them began in 1850, so that's very senior. Staff experience and institutional knowledge. We have some very senior staff here that possess a lot of knowledge of NID, and along with that comes, I think, efficiencies, because we've done it, we've been there, done that, we know how to do it. So that, I think, is a very big strength. It also can be a weakness, though, and we'll get to that in a minute. Excellent customer service. I think we've heard that from others, and I'll say that our customer service team is the best. And I can say that selfishly because it's in our department, but it's not just the customer service that answers the phones, it's not all the billing questions, it's our field staff, it's all of these guys, it's our maintenance teams. They respond in a timely fashion. We operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're always on the clock, so we take pride in that. Supportive of community objectives, health, safety, fire, jobs, economy, and recreation. We do all of that. I mean, if you look at it, we're drinking water, we're irrigation water, we're watershed, we're recreation, we're hydro. All of those things are directly supporting this community. So we think that's a strength. Renewable energy portfolio. We're big into this. Hydro is one of the biggest around, right? It's renewable, it's what we do. But we're also into solar. We have a solar array down at our North Auburn plant. We're looking at other locations where we can expand that. And then we also have participated in biomass, and we're actively pursuing a battery project at our water treatment plant. So we are actively exploring all of those options. Flexibility of operations. Almost every state agency that's come and reviewed us has said, you make my head spin. Your system is the largest, the most complicated we've ever seen. And yeah, that's hard to manage, but some of the benefits of having a system like that is we have some redundancy, we have some backups, and we know how to run the system. It gives us the strength that potentially one little hiccup in the system, we know how to go to the backup system because we're so big or so broad. There are a few areas of concern. We'll get to those in a weakness here in a minute, but generally speaking, we do have a lot of flexibility of operation. Reliability of service and responsiveness, again, this goes back to, I think, partially customer service, and I'd like to think we're all over that. Having read some of those survey results really quickly, just a minute ago, there are obviously some that disagree, but I think we do the best we can. And I think when you compare us to all the other local utilities, our response time, I think, is pretty good. Low debt. This is not my specialty. In fact, I don't like debt at all. But NID, a company the size of NID, and the budget that we have, when you compare our debt to our overall budget, we actually have fairly low debt. Sometimes debt's good, especially when rates are low. So I get all that. We think that's another strength. And then quality of treated water, I think that should be expanded to say quality of water overall. I know some of our canals have some issues, and we do the best we can. But overall, we're so close to the source that the water that comes to us is already pretty high quality. We do, I think, a great job of treating it, sending it to our treated water customer base. But our canal systems also benefit from that. There is, algae growth and things like that. We do the best we can, but the supply of it is still pretty high quality. Okay. Weakness. Session planning and cross-training. So we talked about how we have some senior staff. We do, and they have all that knowledge locked in their head, and when they leave, it goes with them. So we need to figure out a way to cross-train and get that information downloaded before these people leave. Professional development. We spend a lot of time training new employees, getting them up to speed, and I think we need to expand upon that. Some of our greatest assets are our staff, and getting them the education they need to expand upon what we do in NID and get them more qualified in all assets of what we do is a huge opportunity. We don't do enough of it, and that's why it's a weakness. It can also be an opportunity. Employee engagement. So make sure all of our employee teams are engaged at the task at hand and ready and willing to jump when needed. A lot of times people get comfortable in their position, and we need to continue to encourage that expansion and willingness to tackle the job at hand. not just be complacent. So we have to encourage that. Adaptability to change. We have some of those senior staff that says, I'm not doing it, we always done it this way, we're gonna continue to do it that way. We've heard that before. We can change that. It's a potential weakness, but we don't see a lot of it anymore. Department silos. So within the departments within NID, I think internal departmental communications are actually really good. I think once you go beyond that, it gets more struggling. So communicating between maintenance and hydro and operations and finance, all of that could improve. Okay, employee recruitment and retention program, kind of self-explanatory. The labor market right now is a struggle. So recruiting and retaining employees is very difficult, and it's hard to be competitive in today's market. So that's just an ongoing weakness.
And that's where employee engagement also comes in, right?
Yeah.
Engaged, happy employees are more likely to stay and tell their friends how great they are.
Yes. District policy and rules and regulations. We have a ton of them. Most of them overlap. Some of them are no longer prudent. So we really do need to go in, clean up our rules and regs, and make it one cohesive document. So we're looking forward to that. New employee onboarding. Oh, I skipped one. Job description portfolio. So our job descriptions, most of them are very outdated, and some of them don't even reflect the job that the person is doing all that well. And so that's just an overall cleanup that needs to be done. I think the last round of job descriptions that were updated in use and operations was in 2018, and that sounds fairly current, but a lot has changed in those years, and most other departments are much older than that. New employee onboarding. So we're going to bring an employee in, and you're going to tell them how great NID is. We don't do that currently. You bring them in, you tell them, don't do this. OSHA says, don't do that, don't do this, go to work. I think we can do a better job explaining NID, what we do, get a little pride in NID, how we support the community, and I think that would be a beneficial thing when we onboard people. IT infrastructure is a huge weakness, and it's not a knock at the people we have in IT right now. In fact, we have done huge steps in the positive, but it's just something we have ignored for so many years. We're so far behind, it's going to take a long time to catch up. So it is definitely a weakness. Buildings and facilities, NID's 100 years old. We've got old buildings. They're falling apart. We haven't been the best at R&R, so it's reflective in some of our facilities. Innovation, I can kind of tie that a little bit with IT, but also the innovation at our facilities. And I think we're making leaps and bounds in that regard as well. Most of our treatment plants and hydro systems are all fully automated, and that's utilizing innovation. But there are many other areas where we can utilize innovation, even in customer service with smart meters and things like that. We're making those steps, but we got a long ways to go. Ability to communicate to customers. This one's frustrating. Our penimation system, that's our financial system, does all the billing and all that, doesn't really have an opportunity to track the right communication information for all of our customers. We don't have phone numbers, we don't have emails. It's very hard to reach out to our customer base when we don't have that information. So that's a weakness, and we're looking for an improvement in that when we get to a new ERP system. Data storage and management, I think we heard about that just a minute ago, but we can definitely utilize some improvement in there. Our data and our management is a little bit scattered, and sometimes it's compartmentalized within each department. We need to have one place where we can access all of that across the board. Revenue recovery sufficient for cost of service. Heard about that one a bit. We continue to use other sources of revenue to offset rates, and that may not be a bad thing. But what it does show as a weakness is that NID doesn't truly charge the cost of service. And but that's okay. If we have hydro funds or we have other funds that help offset it, and if that's how the board and the community would like to see that work, we can live with that. But it is a weakness in that we don't actually charge the cost of service. Financial systems, policies, and procedures. So kind of the same thing there. Our financial systems are in a bit of disarray, and we're working on it actively currently. But again, we have policies and procedures that overlap and don't always make the best of sense for how we're currently practicing. So a lot of cleanup needed there. Long-term financial planning. We have a lot of big projects coming, a lot, and they're all high dollar. And we really need to focus on how we're going to pay for these projects and get them done. We've done some of that, but not enough. Aging infrastructure, that kind of goes hand in hand with all of that. Dispersed infrastructure. So we're a very large district. You know, we got 500 miles of canals, 400 miles of pipelines. That is a lot to chew on, and that is a weakness in that we are always chasing our tail. Seems like we're always reactionary and not proactive enough to catch it before it breaks, but when your infrastructure is this big and this spread out, it's very hard to do that. Lack of long-term infrastructure investment plan. Kind of talked about that just a second ago. Basically, we need to plan for the future in these big projects. And then expiration of PG&E PPA, that's the power purchase agreement. So our larger hydro facilities are going to expire soon, and the likelihood of us getting a new power purchase agreement with anybody that is lucrative enough to even fathom doing it is very low. The electrical market is, thanks to solar and other renewables, hydro generation payback for PPAs is just really not there. The best way to make income from hydro is to play the market. So we're going to have some real challenges moving forward. Can't be the expert on all that. It's going to be the gambler. Okay. Weakness. You know, the threats or opportunities last?
Opportunities last. We'll end on a good note.
Okay. Okay, threats, changing regulations. Everything we do is regulated and just getting more and more stringent. I get it, it is the world we live in, but it doesn't make our job any easier, and it just is ever increasing. Climate change, we've already heard about that. We kind of know we're going to get less snow, more rain, so we need to prepare for that. Definite threat on how to operate the system in those challenging conditions. Revenue stability. So with changing use patterns, climate change, less water potentially, all that's going to affect our revenue, from less water sales to less hydro generation to go on down the board, less recreation because the reservoirs are empty. All those things are potential threats. Uncertainty of FERC. The 4Es are not a done deal yet. Not a final stamp on it as far as I know, and seems to be an ever ongoing process that's full change. So it's a continued threat. Increased regulatory demands, that's kind of the same as the first line. Everything we do is under some sort of regulatory scrutiny, and that's just going to continue and expand. Let's see. Security threats, cyber vandalism, theft, kind of self-explanatory. We have already experienced a cyber attempt at NID. It was a challenge. Our IT team jumped in, stepped up, did a great job, but just shows you how vulnerable we can be, and that's just the computer side of the world. Our facilities out there in the field have the same type of threat, and they're exposed just like everything else. So we have a ton of risk out there. The next one is one of my biggest concerns, wildfire. We have a lot of facilities that are subject to fire. We have wooden flumes, for God's sakes. They're going to burn in a strong enough fire. And some of our facilities, although I mentioned earlier we have some redundancy, there are certain facilities that are key that don't have the redundancy, and a wildfire would really handcuff us. Natural disasters, so same things, floods, avalanches, earthquakes. We've experienced all of that. We've been very fortunate that we have managed our way through them, but you never know when that big one's going to hit and how it will affect us. Inflation. Inflation's off the charts right now. In fact, inflation is outpacing any rate increase we're ever going to do or get through, and so that's a threat. It's a real challenge given the current economy right now. Supply chain issues. So this one's funny. We started a pipeline job, Cameron can relate to this, out on Ridge Road. We put the pipe in the ground. We needed a valve for that job. It sat for 8 months while we waited for a valve to show up. So supply chain issues are taking almost a year just to get standard equipment. It's rather ridiculous. Competing water supply needs. So this is not only within the state, but even within the district. We have customers that are competing for the water. I mean, we heard it tonight. You know, one use versus another use. Well, my use is better than theirs. That's a threat, and it's something that we need to figure out at NID how we're going to handle that in the future. Statewide water shortage, kind of self-explanatory. I'd love to say we're here to help, but so far we haven't figured out how to pass that water down into the system. Legal, we're a public utility, we're a public agency. There's always some threat from the legal side of the world. Everybody wants to sue us. They think that we have really deep pockets. Little do they know. Changing priorities. This one's interesting for me. We have some very big issues and topics that we are continually tackling that we really need to focus on. But a lot of times we find our focus gets diverted to small things that may not be the highest priority, yet we spend all our time on them and don't get back to the big items. So we really do, I think, need to focus on what our biggest priorities are and stick to them. Employment, market competition. We kind of talked about that already, but market's currently hard. We need to stay competitive, and there are a number of ways we can do that. Customer ability to pay bills or fees. Inflation's tough, rates are tough, so that's always a risk, is that this community can no longer afford the fee that we're charging and the service we're providing. Then what happens? So that's a threat. Customer demand. So customers always want more and want to pay less. Don't blame them for asking. Public confrontation of staff. Believe it or not, I don't know what's going on with the society as a whole, and I sound like an old man. I sound like my dad now, right? But we're actually experiencing a lot of very confrontational customers, whether it be through the phone, whether it be out in the field. We recently had an employee of ours basically attacked at one of the, at recreation. It's just
And thrown in the lake.
thrown in the lake. Unbelievable.
Oh, my gosh.
And kicked in the face.
It's
And he was 19.
Oh.
strange phenomenon.
First job he ever had.
Do we charge the assault?
Yeah,
They charge.
it's just a rough situation out there, and it's increasing more and more. There definitely is a safety risk.
So strange times, and I don't know the answer to that, but it's definitely a threat. And then last but not least here is private property ownership within the watershed. So we all have a concerted effort in preserving and maintaining the watershed. However, we realize we don't control all of it. We can't really control what's going on private land, so that's a threat, not only to the watershed, but the water quality coming out of it. So something we struggle with. Now, opportunities, funding and grants. Show me the money. So that always comes with a catch, though, and we need to analyze, you know, how much is that money going to really cost us. But still, it's an opportunity, and the way the state and the feds are throwing money at water issues right now is great, so we need to explore that. Increased public knowledge and education. I think if you just walk down the street and ask the general public what NID does, they might answer that we supply water, but they wouldn't know all the other things we do. Watershed benefits, the recreation, all those other things. So there's a good opportunity for increased education. Increased non-ratepayer revenues. What is that? Well, that's basically people, how do we increase revenues more than just what we get for water? And maybe that's a out-of-district water transfer. Maybe it's increased hydro. But those are all opportunities that we could be exploring in the future. Watershed stewardship. Opportunity, I think we're doing it, but I think there's a great opportunity to expand upon it. And we're looking forward to that. Technology, innovation, and automation, again, same thing. This just increases our level of efficiency and hopefully reduces staff time, and we just become leaner, meaner, get more done with less, and we'll leverage technology and innovation to do that. We've done that at the treatment plants and hydro. They're monitored all the time through computer systems, which frees up staff time to do other things. It's a great thing, and I think we can expand it district-wide. Leveraging strategic relationships with other agencies. When I first reviewed that one, I thought initially, well, this is about our neighbors. It's CWA, it's South Sutter, it's CID. How can we work together collaboratively with them and get more done? And that's part of it, but it's also working with NGOs and Foothill Water Networks and Circle and all those groups to come up with, you know, good opportunities and a good strategic plan. So that's definitely an opportunity. Employee investment, we already talked about that. We need to hire them on, keep them happy, and retain them. Only the good. Long-term infrastructure planning, again, we already hammered on that. Expanding water efficiency program, this is a good one. We really do focus our efficiency on the treated water side of the world, and partially because that's what was required of us by the state. But there is a huge opportunity on the raw water side, the irrigation water side, to get more efficiency. And the return, the bang for the buck will be much higher. But we have very limited staff, and so we're looking forward to the opportunity to expand that program to reach out to the entirety of the district's customer base. Sound strategic plan, that's what we're here. We're doing it. Canal efficiency, kind of related to that efficiency program that I talked about just a second ago, but it's deeper than that. There are many other ways that we can improve our canal efficiencies. You've heard a lot about that today. Canal lining, measuring, metering, you name it. There's just so many opportunities in there. It's a great opportunity, but it comes at a cost. So that's the balancing act that we have to do. Consolidation of redundant facilities. So when I started at the district, way back when, I actually had hair. So we had 14 water treatment plants. Hey, no comment. That's $1. We had 14 water treatment plants. We're down to 6. And that has all been done through consolidation and combining the systems and gaining more efficiencies. And I think there's continued opportunity to do that. Increased knowledge of finances? No idea. I'm not the finance guy.
Debbie said, did you hear what she said? She goes, that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That was related to Chip's knowledge of the finance. That was in reference to the public and just the board in general. It's often a mystery, and it's not actually that complicated, and once it's, transparent and easily explained, I think it's a good thing to keep an eye on.
I think that was the thing with me, right? Because I don't understand it.
Yeah, and Chip, of course. Keep an eye on Chip.
Very good. Okay, enhanced reporting. So we have lots of reporting tools at NID. They're crazy, though. Depending on what time you run the report, you'll get a different output. So there's just a lot of opportunity to clean up, consolidate, and get our reports all in one area. And I think that will improve as we move into a new ERP system. It's just one avenue where we're going to improve, I think, greatly. Enhancement and diversification of recreation revenue. I'm going to point to Monica on this one, but we have great recreation facilities. Is there more we can do? Is there something else beyond camping? Is it, expanding what we do and what we offer at our facilities? So that's, I think, an opportunity.
Swings with quarter slots?
I would think more like zip lines with launches into the lake.
No, that might make some money.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm thinking of
liability.
Sports.
Where was that legal thing that we?
Yeah, right. Where's our insurance carrier?
Financial systems, this is related to the ERP. Our financial systems are pretty antiquated, pretty broke, and we're working through them the best we can, so kudos to the team that we have on board. But we're really looking forward to an upgrade of the system. And then spot energy market, I kind of talked about this one. As our PPAs expire, I think it's in our best interest and a great opportunity to sell or market our power in the open market where we'll get the best bang for our buck.
Anybody have any questions? That was completed at the staff level. And anyone have any questions before we move on? Yes, Tracy?
When does, if you can tell me, when does the PPA expire? I actually have put that down as a strike, and I think that a great deal.
23.
I thought it was 2025.
33.
33.
Yeah.
10 more years.
Depends on which facility we're talking about. The big ones is basically 33. The littler ones, we're actually already practicing, some alternative payment programs for what, Scott's Flat?
Probably, yeah.
You publish a prospectus, what you would think you're gonna get in the spot market? I mean, is there any information you give out to the public as to what you would expect or what you're expecting to get? And if you don't get it, then that's a metric that you would use to meet goals. What would be an example?
Yeah, so we do have some data we're gonna share at the next meeting. So currently PCWA sells on the spot market. And just on a per megawatt basis, we do generate more revenue with our large PPA. It's actually a really good deal. Moving forward in the future, we don't think that it's going to be quite as beneficial from a revenue perspective, but it'd be hard to project the spot market out that long. Energy prices are highly volatile, and I wouldn't put any credence in a 10-year projection on the energy market. But it is definitely a consideration.
Wouldn't it take a huge influx of resources to make that happen? Doesn't PWA have people that track the market all day? I mean, it's like it's a much more complicated,
Yeah, it's all, so they have basically 3 staff members. They also have other duties as assigned. So one staff member at a time is essentially assigned to watching the daily market and making the sells. It's not, but they also have other duties, so they're not full-time on it. So it is something we don't currently do. It's something we, need to use as we do, but not to that extent we do not. Yes.
We sit around with applicants, the audience, they aren't like.
Oh, wait, Mr. Ross, he just asked what, if we have any metrics by which we would do a comparison to determine whether or not it would be advantageous to try to get into another PPA, as we are with PG&E right now, or to go onto the daily spot market. So it's something to tackle, but we have a little bit of time, but it is definitely a future opportunity, but we'd have to gear up for it.
Now, your watershed stewardship opportunity is very interesting to us environmental folks. Other than the meta restoration and current efforts that you're involved in, what's your thinking there? How are you looking forward to making that a stronger part of NID's program?
So one of the concepts is that after the plan for water is completed, we will tier off into master plans, and one of them would be a watershed master plan that would essentially identify a long-term plan for watershed restoration. As Chip noted, one of our challenges is, we only own a small portion of the watershed. So we have spoken with some of our partners, PCWA in particular, and developing a more broader watershed management plan for the watershed in which we all collectively live in, and hopefully get UBA, as well as Forest Service involved, because we're the predominant landowners. And I think we can make some pretty good movement on consolidating resources and getting some good projects that really move the dial.
There's some really large and interesting collaborations that Melinda has arrived could talk about, already in place throughout the watershed. So NID's partnership as well in some of those big collaboratives would make a big difference, would make a huge difference. For instance, restoration of salmon habitat, some experimental restoration of salmon population above Engelbright, et cetera, et cetera. Some really very, very interesting projects NID could get on board.
And we're involved in those already.
Yeah, George,
Yeah.
we're involved in that one. And quite a number of them, and I think we completely agree with you that the partnerships are the key, because we only own such a small percentage of actual land to do the effort. The wildfire risk in these areas is the most important threat that we all need to now begin focusing on. So, yeah, I think in terms of whatever area that NID might want to, or that you see would be beneficial for us to be a part of, definitely, reach out. I know Melinda and I, we've been talking quite a bit on a number of avenues.
Anyone else?
I do have a comment. I want to thank everybody who participated by submitting the SWOT. All of that information is extremely helpful and is really going to help inform our strategic goals going forward. I happen to have attended the SWOT work that was done in the prior planning effort, and I just want to acknowledge to all of the management and staff who contributed to the NID SWOT analysis that we saw heard today from Chip. In my opinion, without meaning to put down the past, this effort was so far superior, and it's because you guys dug deep. And we don't change an organization by sugarcoating things and putting, oh, we're so good. We put it out. We put out our warts. We put out our problems and challenges, and then we can fix them. And I think what you did today in that list of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you guys put some tremendously valuable thought into it, and it certainly is going to shape my opinion about the strategic goals that we identify our next stage going forward. So I want to thank you for that, because it's not easy to do, to expose your challenges that you have. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, I think, as Chip stated, we were probably a little harsh on ourselves compared to everybody else, so we know what our weaknesses are, right? We live in it, and we deal with it, and we try to move around it. But a huge kudos to the entire leadership team. I think what made it even more valuable is, Kian and Chip, and we all talk all the time. It's really bringing up the entire leadership team, because they have a perspective from the ground up, and I felt that very helpful. Mr. Ross.
Yes, I like the discussion about the opportunities for watershed stewardship. Here, and Director Johansson. Agricultural land stewardship is also a term that's on your paper there, on the terms I gave today. It says agricultural land stewardship is defined as farm and ranch landowners, the stewards of the state's agricultural land, producing public environmental benefits in conjunction with the foods and fiber that they historically provided, while keeping land in private ownership to the greatest extent feasible. I know you're a very good advocate of that. I've heard you speak on it several times. And so a specific outreach program by NID that identifies those commercial agricultural landowners that are applying water, and specific programs that then look at what they can do to conserve water efficiency, and also the metric that follows that, would then report back to the goals, vision, and missions that you're trying.
Yeah, that is a valid point. I have had some preliminary conversations with Sierra Harvest with some kind of concept as to whether we can, run a program like that through them, because they have a lot of really good connections with the agricultural community. And so it's definitely something I think I agree is an opportunity. Okay, so does anyone have any more questions, comments on the staff SWOT? Thank you, Chip, for volunteering to do that. Really great. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is your table, so at your table, you need to identify a speaker and a recorder. And your job is to come up with, say, a list between 5, 10, 15, let's not go to 15, that'd be a long enough, 10 opportunities that you think are the most valuable, but you can also group the opportunities that you've heard today. And so once your group, so you each are going to come up with your own list. You're going to have one person from your table present your list and kind of provide your background on why you guys are proposing this, because remember, these will be tiered into the strategic priorities. And then after each table presents, then we're going to do a collective voting on the opportunities. And then when we kind of get into our mission, vision, values, strategic priorities, this will really come into play. We'll use that work we just did to inform the crafting of those. Does anyone have any questions? I'm gonna pass you out a packet of SWOTs. Pick the person with the nicest handwriting, who loves to speak in front of the public or doesn't. You can also pick the person who doesn't if you'd like, that's always good. And you're gonna have about 20 minutes to distill your list down. You guys aren't doing any work in the last class. Anyone need any paper? Cameron, do you need paper?
We got paper.
So the public, Tracy, the public is.
Taking good direction. I've long.
I know. Evidently. You guys. Technology, innovation, so I think the technology is. I think the public education. Yeah.
I like the first two.
I know.
I agree. Technology that means all
That was an important moment.
But I think Long-term infrastructure water program.
I think that's a good one, because
Five inches, they use 5 inches.
What's the cost benefit ratio of that one? Huge cost. I don't know how, I don't know what that means.
yeah, and what we do,
Well, I mean, you're talking about environmental.
yeah. Part of it.
Well, the day and age of water, you know, it's become a bigger thing, we're talking about, you know, the number of, throwing around a 15 to 30% loss. Unlike now. That's a lot of water.
You know, it is, but sometimes you have to the ground or understand why that is. Trip with you,
The next one is consolidation for Dennis.
Everybody has to have more.
I think that's important.
We're like, no. We're like, no, we're moving on. Sorry. Sorry, sorry.
knowing where the water comes in and confidence in those aspects. You have redundancy, but we don't have similar legal and potential rational.
Well, I know. You know, but it's part of the right, and so
that's an opportunity that is ultimately
over 5 years. And they did. They went for it. No, because no one they just
So then the next one is enhanced reporting.
Josh. And, yeah, Josh. And, you know, as they both said, you know, the secret is great. You don't say, but we're going to reiterate it because we want to fund it.
No, the first one is kind of a
Okay, so, and then when you go.
Can you work on that for me? I know.
Get out, really?
What do you think about this response to the social media, whatever? Yeah, because I don't know. Yeah. People like it, I like it.
I also think that
like for us, kind of from that office, it's gonna be 100% remote.
Okay, we're gonna give you guys about 5 more minutes. 10 more minutes. 5 minutes.
So then, but if you get the person in to help you right now, let's say,
Revenue sources,
and, you know, hey, this person's worth investing in.
So I could develop conservation and they don't
Can't bring it back up.
How is that?
Better education.
More collaboration.
Oh, you do?
House is burning down over here.
Yeah, I think, I like that idea, and then if you could pull Get out, really? Yeah.
We have,
Well, but they do exist in, they do exist
Everybody ready? No. Okay, we're starting to shove out. Remember, we have no clip to leave for back to school night. So, but that's fine, they can just leave and then we'll finish up. So you guys have 4 minutes, right back. Oh, I hate it. 4 more minutes. Ready for back to school.
Oh, yeah.
Ours go back to school, I took a passion. You're talking more. There it goes. Really?
High level. High level.
Now you're in trouble.
I know, that's one of the other reasons I saw what was going on.
Maybe I don't know.
Hey, you got your phone on? What are you doing about that?
I think you're right.
Well, we put in the budget this year, we really, or consultants. Yeah, and so, but I think that it would be my opened up.
When you actually about one or two feet back, come out with one. I can't give the waiver.
They're overly like, yeah, like a microscope. There's no match required. Also, it's planning and engineering, so it's not just. But well, I heard that, but now, there's a special spot.
All right, you're 1 minute over. No, you guys have to be efficient, high performing.
Well, they're the high-performing team over there.
It's an opportunity, people, look at it as an opportunity to get good thoughts out fast. Okay, so we're gonna start with each team, and this is what we're gonna do, is we saw snackers in the back. Okay.
Snackers or slackers?
So, as you guys do your top 5 to 10, hopefully it's near the 5, we're gonna write them down. We're not gonna write down duplicative ones, and then the whole collective group, including the public, we're gonna do the sticker exercise so you can identify your top 5. And then in a subsequent meeting, we'll tier that into the strategic priorities. Make sense? Yep. All right, who wants to go first?
We do.
Ricky.
Okay.
You want to?
We are, what do we call ourselves? We are also a high-performing team over here. So, we did 5. And the first one is, the long-term infrastructure planning that also includes financial planning, okay? That's, we figured was our number 1, our infrastructure. If it's not there, we have no water to serve. Second was technology. And Debbie had, I'll call on you, Debbie, because you expanded the technology piece in an important way. So can you do that?
Yeah, so I talked about it from, just entity-wide, and I've thought about this a lot too, but, the use of the technology. So not only, I broke it down on a smaller level of, the smart meters that we need to provide the real-time data to the customers, and there are areas that we just can't get to because of the connectivity that we have up there. So how do we get the technology there so that we can bring that data in? And then, operationally and maintenance of knowing where all of our hotspots are. So we know from experience, and we've got a lot of guys that know a lot because they're out there in the field and dealing with it all the day, but when you come in and you talk about it in a board meeting, you talk about your experience, but people in today in society want lots of information at their fingertips. Not so much hearing what we know from experience of what we're doing, but we need to bring that data together so we can grab our experience and with the data collection to kind of point out where our problem areas are. So, and then again in finance, you know, and some of our other data reporting collection that we've talked about here. So, you know, being the controller, of course, I talk about finances and money, but, you know, what we want to do in there to gather data and bring it together in our technology problems that we have with our software, and trying to get that information and make that a center point so that everybody in the entire entity can grab that information, whether it be, what are our contracts, you know, where am I spending my money at? You know, where is this contractor at, or where do we buy these things from? We absolutely struggle with just some basic information. So trying to grab that technology to hit every single division and make us just pounce forward.
Thank you. And so, like, what I saw in that is, like, is if you think of a wheel, and the technology is the center of the wheel, and there's a million of these spokes that go out, and the spokes will be far more efficient if everybody has access to the same good, reliable data, and that is an opportunity that I think we've identified that we have. The next one was increased public knowledge and education. You know, this is an example. PCWA just passed a 7% per year rate increase on their customers, and they didn't have hardly any backlash at all. And now I'm not advocating that we do that, but the point of that is the way they did that was they went out into the community and did public education workshops on how their system runs and how much does it cost to do and what has the inflation been. And they did a whole public education piece, and then they came in behind and said, okay, because of this, now we need this. As opposed to saying, we're raising your rates, and that's just the way it is. They did some public education. And I really believe, because when I go out into the field, people don't know where their water comes from. It's just mind-boggling to me, but they don't. And so I think that our community could be really helped by that, and it would be a nice, you know, way in which NID could interact with the community. Okay, 4 is employee investment. We've identified here a lot of challenges in the retention, recruitment, and I've been hearing a lot about training and cross-training with employees. And then we all started brainstorming about an opportunity would be for some apprenticeship and ROP and intern programs that then could bring in younger folks who could be a bench, get trained, cross-trained, and then be able to ascend through the system of, employee training. And last is to expand water efficiency programs, meaning, obviously, you know, smart meters and conservation messaging, and you know, there's lots of opportunity out there to bring in that conservation message, both for treated water customers and for ag. So those were our 5.
Like it.
Okay.
Like it. All right. Team Lisa over there, you guys ready?
Oh, that's us.
Employee engagement.
Great. I was thinking of you, Rich, because we're on this, thinking of this division.
That was good.
Okay, so we didn't itemize them by 1 through 10. And
You have
we
10?
tried to do 5. We had 16. We whittled them down. Now we're at 10. Sorry, guys, there's too many opportunities. There's stop at 5. A few of them, I'll just dovetail on technology and data collection. This in no particular order. We identified technology, innovation, automation, and enhanced reporting. So it's kind of the same thing as technology and data collection. Let's see. Water efficiency, I think I can go on that one with canal efficiency is one of the things that we identified as well. So it's kind of in that same realm. Watershed stewardship, not something that this group talked about, but that was one of the things on ours. Along the lines of Director Heck's last one is increased public knowledge and education. So that is kind of the same as what you guys have said, public knowledge and participation. We need public participation.
We don't need public participation, it's like raining people.
Water. I'm thinking water.
All right. Funding and grants. Funding and grants was an identification. Upgrading financial systems was another, making sure the financial systems work. Long-term infrastructure planning.
Yeah, that was our number 1.
You guys talked about that as well. Leveraging strategic relationships. think that was something that was beneficial for our group as well.
Done.
What was your last one, Greg?
Leveraging strategic relationships with other agencies and organizations.
For their mutual benefit.
Strengthening,
Yeah,
leveraging, great.
I was like, that almost sounds, yeah, what does that mean to you?
I don't know, it was on the list.
There you go.
We're just going from there.
All right.
Yeah, bring it in.
Team Aurora, Monica.
This is the A team. Sorry, guys. The A team. We're gonna go, some of the stuff is already up on the boards there. Improved and developed partnerships with our local agencies, that's on there. I think that's great. The more we work with other agencies and other groups, the more knowledge we gain. Improve, public education and knowledge. Leverage social media. It's great to see NID on, like Instagram and Facebook, but it's the same people liking it every single time when we post something. I'm one of them. Cause I'm like, just hit like.
And Melinda.
Yeah, we're all, it's us three. So I don't know what it's gonna take to get more people to get interested in that kind of stuff, whether we beef it up a bit, catch somebody's eye. I mean, I don't know, but I think we could get a lot more messages out.
Do pictures.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I
Not-
have some
not-
great
Staff spotlight.
Not
Oh,
stock
no.
My first person.
No. Cam. Okay, we have enhanced and improved technology. I think that's already up there. It'd be great to do, get the financial system. We all know that sometimes we run a report and we can run it the next day, it doesn't match. Invest in employees, engagement, training. I remember years ago when I first started, it's like we all knew each other, and granted, I'm separated from the Grass Valley office because I'm up in the hills, but I still spend a lot of time down there, and I feel like you drive by an NID truck and you're like, I always like to wave at people. Nobody waves at me anymore. We need to change that.
You have to wave and make eye contact.
I do. I'm gonna start honking my horn. Water efficiency programs, I think that's great. And that, a lot of that too, we can improve that by getting that on social media. We said secure redundant facilities. So it's great to, minimize the redundancy, but sometimes we might need that redundancy because something might fail and we need other opportunities to move water, or to keep water flowing. So sometimes redundant facilities aren't a bad thing. And then we have expand watershed stewardship program.
So with that redundant facilities, I'd emphasize with that,
Yes.
like standalone systems, right? So a lot of our systems are tied together, but we have a few that aren't. So we may have an intertie with the city or whatever, but those standalone systems are obviously something that we can improve upon.
Yeah, for sure, especially in a natural disaster, right? Definitely. All right, team Cindy, Laura, John.
The A-plus team over here. Most of ours were hit on, so I'll just briefly talk to you. So we've got grant funding opportunities, but there's so much grant funding out there on so many different, even consolidating and looking at facilities, the watershed, there's lots of grant funding. And also the long-term infrastructure, post-commerce care and replacement. We really need to focus on keeping our existing infrastructure operable. And then technology, innovation, and automation, the ERP, meters, canal measurements, as Debbie was saying, and financial, it's across the board, there's scope and how to do it and all that. Regional collaboration and networking based on common ground, working with all of our peers and the customers as well. As was mentioned, we really need to find a way to better reach our customers. Meet them where they're at instead of just expecting them to look at our Facebook page. Employee engagement and investment, cross-training with experienced staff. If succession planning, people are leaving, they have wealth of information. We need to document that information, and so the rest of those new employees can benefit from it. And then better collaboration with land use authorities. planning for easements and done in Placer County, all of this parcel is landlocked and they don't have access. And then the neighbors say, no way are you gonna come across my property. And so it creates a lot of headaches where if we could say, we want an easement put on this sale, just be more active with the land use authority. Then down strategic planning is measurable actions to focus staff efforts. We take this seriously, it's going good. And then adaptation to climate change, ecology, healthy watersheds, incorporate tribal ecological knowledge in a lot of these watershed efforts. Tribes have been maintaining it for thousands of years and learn from them.
Laura, can you repeat the one right before that?
The town strategic planning with measurable actions to focus staff efforts.
That's what we're doing.
All right, Team Kian, Naomi, Karen.
We use the computer because we are the winning team. And I'll say the winning team, everyone must have been listening to us because everything is.
They'll copy you.
We copy you, is that what you're saying?
We are the winning team,
But
so.
yours is fine for a public agency, let's just get that.
Yeah. So grant funding, and we really fancy words that we typed here, but I'm just gonna say the grant funding, technology, improving the external relationships, so strategic relationships, conservation programs that incent change in the use of water. Ensuring financial stability, identifying water supply options, employee engagement.
I think you copied us.
No?
We were right next door.
Still typing while everybody was talking.
Yeah, Kian.
Okay. So you see we have 3 boards filled up, all amazing ideas and a lot of overlap, which is to be expected, right? Because we all have the same goals in mind of making NID better. So what we're gonna do now is you can, and the public can also participate. You can make it okay. All right. So you're gonna get 5 dots. And you can put any number of your dots, you can put like 1 dot under innovation, spread your dots out amongst the 3 boards. Or you can be kind of crazy and put them all under one thing, it doesn't matter. So this is all up to what you want to do, but the idea is to see if we can reach some consensus on what our future opportunities are. Because what we'll do is we'll utilize this work we do today, if we can kind of reach some consensus and bulking them together into developing our strategic priorities. So we're going to hand your dots out, walk around to the board, put your dots down, and then we'll see where we land. Yes, Tracy?
Okay, I missed this part because I was talking. What's the difference between the 4 boards?
Yes.
This is parking lot. Ignore this board. This is from my notes of what we are going to do later.
Okay.
There's no difference. They just ran out of room.
Oh, okay.
They're all equally important.
Okay.
And spread them out so you're not all standing next to each other.
Okay.
And to clarify, the different colored dots mean nothing.
The different colored dots mean nothing.
So
You get 5 votes.
each person or each table gets 5 dots?
No, each person.
Oh, each person?
Yeah, members of the public. So make sure to put your dot like under here if you can. You can't have 2 sets of dots.
No,
Oh.
I was trying to be helpful.
Okay, pass your dots out to your
All right.
team.
Which color is the dot?
Hand out.
And then come on up and do your dots. All right.
Hurry up, hurry up. Hey, let's switch. I'll play later on.
So you have a graduating, graduator.
Real quiet.
I gotta get out of here. If you don't let me go right now.
More dots. Judy did this now, and I can't believe it.
Dollar for every, but data security.
Maybe. Everybody get the dots?
Here's some more. Okay. I only have 4, but I have, okay, you got what you need?
I thought I got it over there.
Technology, just for an
No, we have lots of people.
You can see where the money's gonna be.
I didn't follow, where, the list that they were prioritizing, where did that list come from?
This was a popular file.
No kidding.
That came
Oh, this is so.
Yeah, they were picking things off of a list.
That board all the way up top.
These tables generated from all.
Put another one there.
SWOT.
I put them all in one.
So, some of them are boiled down.
Yeah, they've just been,
Yeah, they were only allowed to do around 10.
like, existing water supply, I mean, orders of help, build a dam.
Yeah.
I'm trying, I just missed too much.
Yeah, I think.
The title is Climate Crisis, something like that? Yeah. Red Squirrel's hilarious, man, I love it. Yeah.
It was in, it was in.
My daughter loves that movie. I actually like it more than she does.
Yeah.
That's the only time.
Stupid Floss with the Sid. He's the best.
Project. It hasn't come up. I thought Tracy.
I mean, you know, that's kind of where it's at.
Okay, Ricky, I know, you got young kids.
Yeah. You're not grouchy, you're actually a fun guy. No, we want to keep the image.
No, I go like this, yeah. You don't know what we're doing, we gotta get rid of it. You can be all strategic and not put your dots next to ones that already have a lot.
I'm gonna put one on the list. Oh, yeah. Maybe not often enough.
Oh, it's
You gotta get some more of those going. I think the public outreach. We do, a lot of school children. Yeah, rural young grades too, all the way down to like first grade. Those are always the most fun.
I bet they're so
Like special needs adults that are the most engaged.
I'm gonna put one on Jennifer.
They came in just hot, ready to talk. It was crazy. Yeah, that was one of the coolest ones. I hope we can find that lady again to do another.
Yeah, that. Yes, dear. I mean, that's all of it.
Is it so windy back there? Yeah. Yeah, we should do that at all the parks, like cycle trips. Especially E-George. E-George has like the most to see, probably the most interesting plant.
The world is your oyster. Where'd you go?
Yeah, I do all of them. Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah, E-George is the most exposed plant. Some of them, a lot of stuff is kind of buried underground. Like if you went to the lumber treatment plant, you wouldn't even realize it was a treatment plant. There's not a lot to see there. But E-George is we should set that up soon. When the weather cools down a little bit. In a month or two, and then we'll go hit it.
So I do like a quarter.
I did that. Yeah, that was right in line with it. Be a good way to get it. It gets the ball rolling. Yeah, we don't get a lot of requests for just the average community member.
So I think we're just about done. Okay, I'll.
Let's just go and we'll make it happen.
Do I need the microphone? Can you hear me? We can hear you. No one's ever said I need a microphone.
That was very good.
Better than sticky notes.
Oh, Some people may or may not say their dots to the end, so they could see, they needed to use all their dots in one area. I always lose the silent function. Usually it's too many times. I'm seeing that, I can't remember Okay, so I think some really good things are coming out of this. So we'll do some official counting, but based off of my unofficial, secret, accurate eyeball, long-term planning is definitely a big one, right? I didn't use any dots, but this is one of the most important things to the district, in my personal opinion. Increased public knowledge and participation, got a lot. Probably not the same as expand water efficiency. Sound strategic planning did not do bad. Technology, data collection, employee investment. So I think we have some front runners so far. Technology, data collection, employee investment, and long-term planning. Watershed stewardship did really well, funding and grants. And then fiscal sustainability. I think we have a really good suite of things to look at. So the idea will be we will take these and we will then incorporate them into our strategic goals or priorities once we get to that section. So the next meeting, we are going to focus on reviewing metrics. We're going to focus on mission and vision, possibly get to values, and then the last meeting, depending if I'm hoping to get it through in 2 meetings, then we'll do strategic priorities. Does anybody have any feedback on this exercise and what kind of came out of it? Were you surprised? Was it easy to reach consensus in your group? Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, it was actually pretty easy. I think we all have similar thoughts and ideas. Work to the district and opportunities available.
Yeah. Lisa, were you surprised that there was consistency between some of the groups?
I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see that the public and staff engage.
Yeah, that is interesting. A lot is the same. Laura, what do you think?
I think it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. Very interesting. Trevor, you have any feedback?
I think it's probably the way we expected it to go. All the important things.
Yeah, I mean, we are somewhat limited, right? We are legally here for a reason, so we can't stray too far off.
Yeah. Actually, the technology thing, I guess, is I'm dropping my candidacy and I'm gonna consult. You bring my other businesses.
I'm gonna submit it, but yeah, it's a bid.
Yeah, this is huge, right? The next 10 years are going to be major in this arena. There are gonna be huge advances. And this is, as regulations increase, what really increases is reporting, real-time monitoring. This is going to be more and more and more important as technology improves and improves. And, you know, you can make a mess with data really, really quick. So NID is famous for having piles of boxes of files for 100 years. Seriously, I almost had a heart attack because I am like the opposite of a hoarder. I'm a purger. We also have that with data. If you don't collect data properly, manage it properly, know what you're doing with it, it makes a disaster of an issue. So I do think that this has a lot of opportunity from efficiency standpoint, from providing data to the public, from regulatory reporting, transparency, understanding our system runs better. So this is going to be huge in the future.
Just the operational improvements, what I saw with the hydro, it's amazing what the guys have done.
Yeah.
Just being able to sit in one location, getting the telemetry to you, making decisions that were, mechanical devices before the upgrade. It's amazing how more efficient you can run something with not a huge cost. I mean, it's not a small cost, but I was impressed with what I saw.
Yeah, and it pays for itself over and over again, right? Because it reduces risk, enables us to watch for anything that could potentially cause a fire, and any remote monitoring you can do of the infrastructure just pays for itself tenfold. All right, Brad, any comments?
Ma'am.
All right, did you use only 5 dots?
I did.
Okay.
This was better than the reindeer game.
So next time I have tapped Brad for coming up with the icebreaker for the group. So, now Brad will be doing the game at the beginning, so he's really excited. He already committed to it offline. So just ignore him, he's embarrassed. Okay. Next, anybody else?
Yeah, what are we doing? Staff roping?
Yeah. We're doing some mutton busting. It's gonna be fun. Yeah. Tracy, feedback? Melinda?
Good cookies.
Yeah, really good cook.
I wanna know because I'm still not eating carbs. Let's not talk about the cookies. Anyone else? Can we have a new gentleman to the area? You want to introduce yourself to everybody? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jan. I moved here a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to be here. I'm glad I did.
Good. We're glad to have you. Jan is from Davis.
One.
Was from Davis. He likes Grass Valley better already, so.
Yeah, Davis doesn't have any water left,
No.
I hear.
They are low. They're lowlanders, no water. Much better here. Greg, anything? All right, well, that's all we have unless somebody has something. So we will meet again in 2 weeks. It's gonna be really fun. I might have just lied. I'm not sure when the next meeting. I'm getting a lot of bewildered looks right now.
I feel like 13, 3 weeks.
We have 3 weeks, that's right. This is extra, this is one of Steph's favorite times of the year is when we get an extra week in between meetings. So we are excited about this. So yes, it's the 13th? The 13th. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
A little round of high fives at the